4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
From the palatial yet not overly ostentatious studios of the Infinity Sports Network here in beautiful New York City, sitting on top of the 10th floor of 345 Hudson Street. Welcome on in to another week and a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show across all great local Infinity Sports Network affiliates, Sirius XM, Channel 375, the free Odyssey app, and as always, streaming on YouTube. 888-710-4ISN. That's 888-710-4476 is the number to jump on board with us. You could always hit me up on the good old cesspool of Twitter or on Instagram, where I'm always straight flexing at Zach Gelb. That's ZACHGELB. And by the way, I have a lot of pressure on me today. So since I am a 30 under 30 award winner for my alma mater, Temple University, they bestowed the honor upon me today to take over their Instagram account. So they want to do like a Temple takeover. Here's one of our alums, show them a day in your life and kind of do all that. Well, their Instagram account has over 100,000 followers. So I'm just waiting to send like something accidental, or I post something the wrong way, or I offend somebody, and then it ends up being Zach Gelb canceled, and we don't even have a job by 6 p.m. Eastern time when we do get out of here. But anyway, we should have a fun show today. Josh Pastner, the former college basketball head coach, is going to join us at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific time. I thought the tournament was subpar and underwhelming through the round of 64. So in the opening round, the first round of the NCAA tournament, I didn't think it was wonderful, but I sat here on the air on Friday when we had a day and a half of the tournament, and I said, with all the big seeds still alive and looking like through the weekend, right, when you get into the round of 32, and more so who survives after the round of 16, I thought, or going out of the 32 into the Sweet 16, I said, I think from the Sweet 16 and on, we're going to have a sensational tournament. Now, I kind of miscalculated that because the round of 32, I thought, and it's just one man's opinion, that on Saturday and Sunday, we had riveting games, we had good storylines, and it's almost funny to me how when we do have these major upsets, and right, we've been fortunate since 2018 to see 2 number 1 seeds fall, 3 number 2 seeds fall. And when those teams go on long runs, there is always somebody that goes, I really don't want to see these Cinderellas advance out of the first round because, you know what, it doesn't make for a good tournament when they're in the Elite Eight or the Final Four and there's a blowout. So when I watch the opening rounds of the tournament and people are bitching, oh, no buzzer beaters on the first day of the tournament, the first round, no 16 or 15 or 14 or even a 13 winning. I sit here and I go, aren't you the same people? And it's almost you damned you do, damned you don't. That bitch about the tourney not being great late if a Cinderella's around, and now you're upset that Cinderella isn't there. Each year, the tournament is different. And I don't think you make a general big statement on the tournament that will impact tournaments for years to come. Like I was told one and done was going to ruin college basketball. NIL now. Oh, you won't get Cinderellas with all the money. It's like, you can't make that evaluation yet. But yes, when you sit here through the first 2 rounds of the tournament, and we have 4 number 1 seeds, 3 number 2 seeds, 2 number 3 seeds, 3 number 4 seeds, a 5 seed, 2 6 seeds, and a 10 seed, and the 10 seed, it's not fair to just say it's Arkansas. It's Arkansas with John Calipari. Hello, sign me up. The round of 32 was really the start of this tournament. And I think from the Sweet 16 and on, it's going to be a magnificent final 2 weeks of the college basketball season. You look at the teams remaining in the matchups. Auburn and Michigan. Bruce Pearl and Auburn made a massive statement this weekend. It's one thing to crush Alabama State 116, but that's a very good Creighton team. I thought Creighton could have pulled off the upset. Auburn was clearly the better team. Dusty May, he knows how to win in this NCAA tournament. You saw what he did at FAU. Michigan, they beat UC San Diego, and everyone said they were going to upset Michigan, and then they beat Texas A&M. Auburn, Michigan, fun matchup. Ole Miss, Michigan State, incredible coaching matchup. And some people are like, Zach, why are you confident that Ole Miss is going to get to the Sweet 16 before the start of the tournament? And I said, because of Chris Beard. Chris Beard is one of the best coaches we have in college basketball. And look at what he's done the last 2 years at Ole Miss. And it just shows you how good of a coach he is, And with Chris Beard, it's just how much longer can they keep him? I know they redid his contract. I think he'll be back next year because I don't think there's a marquee job there right now that Chris Beard is a fit for. But a year from now and the next big job that opens, I really do believe Chris Beard's going to be a player. But think about the coaching matchup, Chris Beard and Tom Izzo. And by the way, think about the raspiness that you'll have with both of those coaches just speaking to the media with Beard and Izzo. So that's a very good part of the region of that bracket. Then you have Florida and Maryland. Florida had their scare up against UConn. UConn, for 37 minutes of that game, I thought were the better team. But down the stretch, Florida, and you knew UConn wasn't going to go out without a fight, even though they're not the strong team this year. You knew that UConn was going to show you the heart of a champion, and they did that. Florida didn't play their best brand of basketball over the weekend, and it was still good enough to beat UConn. And now you set up a Florida-Maryland matchup with the Crab Five, which, by the way, epic nickname. Best nickname in the tournament since Florida Gulf Coast did Dunk City. But the Crab Five with the Fab Five feeling and all that stuff, phenomenal job by Maryland. And they gave you that signature moment, NCAA tournament, right? It looks like they're going to lose after Colorado State hits a three to put them up by 1. And then you had the Queen game winner as well. And up to debate, controversy. When I saw it live, I didn't think it was a travel. When you slow it down, yes, you could say it's a travel by the letter of the law. But do they ever call that? No, they do not. So that sets up a fun offensive matchup between Florida and Maryland. Texas Tech, Arkansas. Calipari, and we'll get more into him in just a second, becomes a major storyline in this tournament. The only double-digit seed remaining. And not only that, look at where Coach Cal was a year ago, right? Needed to leave Kentucky. It was time for him to go. And now, a year later, he's at Arkansas, where at the end of Kentucky, he had some bad losses. The most recent one was the last one to Oakland. And now look what he's done. You had John Calipari win his opening round game up against Bill Self and Kansas. And then you had John Calipari go toe-to-toe with Rick Pitino and be the better team there as Pig Suey's off to the Sweet 16 and they'll go up against Texas Tech. And no disrespect to Texas Tech, but I want Arkansas to advance to the Elite Eight, and I would like to see them play for a spot in the Final Four up against the winner of Florida and Maryland. Then you circle this game, Kentucky and Tennessee. Mark Pope, right? He replaced John Calipari. Mark Pope in Kentucky, I thought going into that game, they were not going to beat Illinois. It's one thing, right? You beat Troy, then you're going up a very good program with Brad Underwood. And Kentucky just did a magnificent job yesterday, pretty much leading from wire to wire. And they did an incredible job on the defensive side of the ball. But you look at Kentucky, they're now going up against Tennessee, who I think is an underappreciated 2 seed. Like Tennessee, right? It's with Rick Barnes. He's never won a national championship. Been to a Final Four in the early 2000s when he was at Texas. All right, they beat Wofford, big deal. Then they were in command and in control up against UCLA. That's going to be a really fun matchup. And also, Kentucky has beat Tennessee twice this year. Houston, Purdue. Painter, incredible coach. Purdue, right? They beat McNeese. You saw McNeese beat Clemson when Clemson only had 13 points in the first half. You had Purdue beating High Point. A lot of people thought McNeese and High Point could be upsets. McNeese was. High Point wasn't. Purdue takes care of business up against McNeese. Will Wade now off to NC State. But Purdue-Houston, I still think Houston is, I don't want to say they're going to win the game at ease, but I'd be very surprised if they lose to Purdue. But then Houston will have a test with whoever wins between Kentucky and Tennessee. And then you get to the Duke region. Arizona almost choked that game away last night. And that would have been a Tommy Lloyd classic in the NCAA tournament. But they survived. They advanced. Now they go up against Duke. And Duke's the most dominant team in the country. Duke is the best team in the country. The Cooper Flagg injury was kind of all evaporated into thin air in the opening round game up against Mount St. Mary's when he stuck out his tongue and celebrated emphatically after the slam dunk. But it's all right. One thing to blow out a 16, that's expected. Then you're going up against a Baylor team similar to UConn, right? I know Baylor won their championship a few years ago. UConn coming off back-to-back. But Scott Drew, heart of a champion. You know they're not going to go out. You would think easily going into that game. But Duke just crushed and absolutely annihilated and made it easy up against Baylor. So do I think Arizona will beat Duke? No, I do not. I would be very shocked if we're sitting here and Duke is not off to the Elite Eight. And then you got BYU, Alabama, which could be a fun matchup as well. BYU's offense is awesome. Now, they got lucky late because they went from maybe the most confident team in the tournament for most of that game up against Wisconsin to the final 2-3 minutes. They couldn't hit water if they fell out of a boat, for crying out loud. And they were just trying to throw the ball away and give that game away. And Alabama's offense, we know how good Alabama has been. An incredible coaching job his first few years at Alabama with Nate Oates, who I loved when he was at Buffalo. But BYU, Alabama should be a good one. So I look at this NCAA tournament, the 16 teams remaining, this is fun. This is really good. But I think there's two takes off the weekend. We'll get into the Dan Hurley conversation and his antics coming up at 4 p.m. Eastern time. But I want to delve into John Calipari and Rick Pitino because that was such a highly anticipated matchup. Let's start with Pitino. I wanted to start the show saying I understood what he was doing. I did. RJ Lewis just did not have it. He was, 3 of 17 in the game. And Rick Pitino did an interview locally in New York with Brandon Tierney. He used to host in this time slot for years and is the color commentator for Johnny's Basketball on the radio, and Sal Licata. And this was about 2 weeks before the tournament started. And Rick Pitino even admitted, this is a team with the way that we are inconsistent shooting and the free throws, that we could lose early in the tournament or we could easily go to an Elite Eight. So St. John's, they win the Big East regular season championship. Then, even after some slow starts in the semifinal and championship game, they just absolutely smoked their two opponents. And the second half, they won those games just going away. And I was in the building for one of them. But St. John's, their shooting killed them. And more importantly, when you have the Big East Player of the Year, you would think Rick Pitino, for a team that's ahead of the process, would go down with what got him there, right? You don't bench. And you could make the case that maybe the way that Zuby's been playing recently, that Zuby's their best player, but RJ is the Big East Player of the Year. So you don't think you would bench him for practically the final 5 minutes of a second-round NCAA tournament game with a trip to the Sweet 16 on the line. But in the moment, I thought to myself, I can at least understand it because nobody else was because he wasn't hitting a shot, and he was god-awful. But the problem with that is you know what your flaw is with your team. Either they're on or they're not. There's no middle ground. If Jalen Milroe was a basketball player, he would go to St. John's. And what I mean by that, it's because the ceiling he's on, he's dynamite. You saw what he did up against Georgia, right? But then when he's off, like Oklahoma and Tennessee, it's just no awareness and a rough watch. And that was St. John's. When their guys are playing defense and hitting shots, they could easily have got to a Final Four, maybe won the entire NCAA tournament. But when they're off, no one else lends a helping hand. And that's the problem. How great RJ was all throughout the season, they needed somebody else to bail him out. And 4 minutes, or 5 minutes actually, is too long of a time when no one's bailing you out to keep him on the bench. So I understood it at first. All right, give him a breather for a second. All right, see if somebody else could hit some shots. But also, I still just have that alarm that goes off into my head that goes, I love Pitino. I love him. I love Rick Pitino. He's so fun to watch, coach. Everywhere he goes, the guy wins. Providence, Kentucky, Louisville, you name it. In college, he goes, they win. Look what he's done last 2 years at St. John's. It's unbelievable. But you could separate the praise of what he did and what he's done and what I think he will continue to do with the decision in the game. Because, even though I sound 50-50 on it, if you make me lean one way or another and you just say, they're going to bench RJ for the final 5 minutes, well, you know what? I'd rather go down swinging with my best players. And you don't have a lot of great players. Zuby and RJ were playing great for you this year. RJ just did not have it in the game. But isn't what St. John's is, how these guys just took such big steps the last few years? And they came out of nowhere with Pitino, and they've been a slow starting team. So there's a better chance of you winning that game with RJ on the court than him being on the bench. So that's why I'm not going to go to the level of crushing Rick Pitino, but I do lean from a little understanding, but I understand the criticism more importantly, and it was the wrong decision. And this is where he lost me. Because Rick Pitino could say whatever he wants. And I'm not saying that Rick Pitino's going to get up on the podium and just be, open up everything and tell you everything and slam one of his players. I'm not saying that. But Rick Pitino can say whatever he wants, and his explanation, I think, even tells me he believes, even though he didn't say it, that he made the wrong decision, and even he's second-guessing himself. This was Rick Pitino on why R.J. Lewis was kept on the bench.
You had R.J. on the bench, for a pretty long stretch at the end. Was that just because he just wasn't making them, or was there something more to it?
Played 30 minutes. It's a long time.
So he was tired?
No, played 30 minutes, and I went with other people. You already know the answers, Roger. You're asking leading questions. You already know it. So don't ask leading questions. You already know why he didn't play. Okay.
Was there one play with RJ that made you sit him the last 5 minutes?
You know he was 3 for 17. You know he was 0 for 3. So you're answering your own. I'm not going to knock one of my players.
So here's what I don't get. You started off with the 30 minutes crap. We're in the NCAA tournament. It's survive in advance. I don't think RJ was tired. That's why that's not why he was on the bench. Everyone knows that. So you don't have to start with that crap. You could have just said, he didn't have it tonight. We wouldn't be here without him. And I tried to find something from someone else in desperation. And that's a decision I made, and obviously it didn't work out. Where you're telling us what you did, you're not coming off condescending, and also you're not throwing your kid under the bus. So the Pitino answer I didn't love post-game. I almost hated the answer more post-game than the actual decision when I was watching it live during the game. I thought the answer made the decision even worse. And if St. John's would have won the game and someone would hit a big shot down the stretch, no one's criticizing Rick Pitino. But that's the way that this works. Now, on the other side, John Calipari. I have loved John Calipari for years. Maybe it's just with college basketball, but I love a big personality coach. I like a coach that gets under the skin of people and a coach that 50% of the people love him, 50% of the people hate him. With all that being said, with what happened at Kentucky, it was time for Calipari to leave, and it was time for Kentucky to move on from him. But look at what has happened since then, right? You have Calipari go team up at Arkansas with the Tyson family, right? Get all the NIL money, come on in. Who would have thought, forget 2-3 months ago, how about 2 weeks ago? How about a week and a half ago? Right, on Selection Sunday, who would have thought a week ago that John Calipari would win not one but 2 NCAA tournament games? Where towards the end of Kentucky, not only would he lose, but he would lose to some teams that you're scratching your head saying, how the heck does that happen when John Calipari has all this talent compared to some of these Cinderellas? So Calipari goes to Arkansas in year one, beats Bill Self, survives that game, then goes toe-to-toe, and his team was better than Rick Pitino's team. And now they're off to the Sweet 16. That decision for John Calipari to leave Arkansas has worked. But it doesn't stop there. Because Mark Pope then goes from BYU back home to Lexington, where he played college basketball and won a championship as a player. And Mark Pope now has Kentucky in the Sweet 16, which I did not think was going to happen before the NCAA tournament. And I love Mark Pope. Mark Pope has been on this show a ton of times. I thought it was just a matter of time that he was going to get a bigger job than BYU. I didn't think it was going to be Kentucky, but that hire a year later has worked. And not only that, because you hit the trifecta here, so then BYU became open, and Kevin Young gets brought over from the Suns to coach BYU. And BYU is a top recruit coming in next year in the country, but right now they're in the Sweet 16. Look at that. That's remarkable. Because rarely in sports you have a win-win-win. Rare in sports you have a win-win, let alone a win-win-win, a win all around. But this is just a triangular win for Kentucky, for Arkansas, and for BYU. And it's cool that all three are in the Sweet 16. So I feel happy for John Calipari, who the criticism the last few years was fair. Let's not hide. Let's not run from it. It was time to leave, and it was time for Kentucky to move on from him. But it doesn't mean that Kentucky basketball, obviously them being a blue blood, still can't succeed without Cal. They succeeded before Cal, and they'll succeed after Cal, as evident. And it also doesn't mean that John Calipari, all of a sudden, who's a Hall of Fame coach, forgot how to do this stuff. And he goes to the SEC, stays in the SEC, to Arkansas with the resources, Pig Suey, and now Pig Suey, pigs can fly. They're flying to the Sweet 16. What a story. Awesome. Really damn cool. All right, it is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. What's your biggest takeaway from the first 2 rounds of the NCAA tournament as we're down to our final Sweet 16 teams? 888-710-4ISN. That's 888-710-4476. I still have not remembered the phone number yet. 888-710-4ISN. I think I remember that part. But the 888-710-4476 part I have not remembered. But that's how you can get on board with our brand new phone lines that did launch last week. All righty, we'll take a timeout. All 4 number 1 seeds do advance. And I'm looking at who's the favorite in the NCAA tournament. I'll give you the top 3 teams, in my opinion, 1, 2, and 3 in order, that have the best chance to win it all. We'll take a break. We'll come on back in 5 minutes. Zach Gelb Show, off and running, very busy Monday, another week right here on the Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
So this isn't a show where we just agree or disagree for the sake of disagreeing. Like, there are some shows out there that, all right, one host will say something, then the producer will be like, oh, I totally disagree. And then you go to the other producer like, no, you're both wrong. And it's like, well, it's only one or the other. So it's like, we can't both be wrong. So I'm just going to ask this simple question. If you had to respond right now, and let's say your life savings are on the line, Duke or the field to win it all? Stu, what would you do? Would you go Duke or the field to win it all? Your life savings are on the line.
Cooper Flag's healthy. They're flying. I'd go Duke.
Samter, Duke or the field?
Just playing the stats and the odds, I have to go with the field.
Okay. Now, it would be funny since
You're both idiots.
you said one thing and then Samter said the other thing, and I just said we won't do something in a A-B question, and then how it does go down. I think you're both idiots. Well, that statement could be true, but I would lean with Stu. Duke right now looks like the best team in the country. I thought they were the best team in the country going into this tournament. There was just a question of what Cooper Flagg was going to be. But even so, even if it took a while for Cooper Flagg to get going, we just saw them in the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg still find a way to be the preeminent team in the ACC. And I know people say, oh, what does that mean? The ACC is down. But Duke, we all know how elite they are. We know John Shire has done a really good job in the aftermath of Coach K, but now it's time to win it all, and you clearly have the talented team to do so. And you saw over the weekend, start off on Friday, 22 minutes for Cooper Flagg, 14 points, 7 rebounds. Within 2 minutes into that game, you knew he was good. And then up against Baylor, he played 29 minutes, ended up getting 18 points, 9 rebounds, 6 assists. He looks absolutely phenomenal. And that's why he's going to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft. Now, just because you're going to be the number 1 pick in the NBA draft doesn't mean you're going to win it all. But right now, with him being healthy and how good of a team they already had with him not being healthy, it's very tough for me to pick against Duke. So I do think Duke is going to win it all. If I can't pick Duke, then I would go to Florida. Because what Florida did this weekend actually may have been more impressive than what they did in the SEC tournament. Because we've seen Florida really, even though they've been a really good team and a great team all throughout the season, we saw in the SEC tournament, that's when they finally got some respect. And it was really that Alabama game where they crushed Alabama 104-82, and then they didn't even play their best brand of basketball up against Tennessee. And you never really thought that Florida was ever going to lose to Tennessee in that SEC championship game. But you had 14 teams make the NCAA tournament this year from the SEC. And Florida, even with them winning the SEC tournament, and a lot of people were picking them to win it all or get to the championship game, like my tournament pick, and this is not a hot take, this is not me going out on a limb, it's going with 2 number 1 seeds, but before the tournament started, I said Duke, Florida, Duke's going to win a high-scoring national championship game. But Florida going into the tournament was playing like the best team in the country, even though I thought Duke was the best team in the country. But what they did up against UConn, where they had every reason to lose that game, like, you watch the first 36, 35 minutes of that game, you would have thought UConn was going to win the game, and we would have been sitting here today singing the praises of Dan Hurley and what a remarkable coach Dan Hurley is, back-to-back national champions, and went on a longer run this year than what we could have imagined entering the NCAA tournament. But down the stretch, Florida and the Gators were unleashed. Florida and the Gators were not put out. And they were circling, and then they just quietly pounced. And there's always a game in the NCAA tournament. You know, it's rare. I know UConn, right, is an exception. But it's rare in the NCAA tournament when your team is standing on the podium at one shining moment, listening to one shining moment, having the championship trophy after winning a national championship, that there's not at least one scare you type of game when you win a game that just as you won it, you could have easily just as lost it. And that was the test for Florida. Because UConn, you knew, even if it wasn't their strongest team in the last 3 years, that they weren't going down without a fight. And not only were they not going down without a fight, it looked like for a while they were going to win a 10-round fight or they were going to knock out Florida. But even though through the first 7 rounds or so, 8 rounds or so, UConn looked like the team, right, the old champion. And they were going to find a way to just continue this magical run and do this incredible job and this incredible moments that we've seen the last few years. Even though they won the first 8 rounds, in the 9th round, Florida threw a knockout punch. And they ended up winning the game. So that, to me, is why I put Florida as the second best team in this tournament. Duke is 1. Because any championship team needs to win a game that they probably should have lost, if we're just being honest. And Florida wasn't anywhere close to playing their best brand of basketball, but in the defining moments of the game, they were the more intelligent team, and they made their free throws too. They were really good at the free throw line, and they took over when needed to. And then after that, if I'm giving you the top 3 teams to go win a championship this year, Duke 1, Florida 2. I would not have said this before the tournament, because I did not like the way that they entered this tournament. If you would have asked me a month ago who would have won the NCAA tournament, I would have said it's either going to be Duke or it's going to be Auburn. Auburn going into the tournament, and I know how good their roster is, because we've had Bruce Pearl on this show before many times through the years. You know, we're hoping Coach is going to join us at some point later on in the week before they go up against Michigan, and we've been exchanging some texts. But when I looked at Auburn, I did not like the way that that team was playing. 3 out of their last 4 games being losses heading into this NCAA tournament. And that Creighton team with Ashworth, Kalkbrenner, and McDermott, that's a very good team. And they did a very good job up against Creighton. And now you look at the road for Auburn, especially when Chad Baker-Mazara got injured, and you see what Todd Pettiford, the freshman, can do. And he's sensational with the 23 points. And Denver Jones with his defense. And Janai Broom, even though he did not play this wonderful game, but even when he doesn't show up offensively in terms of the point department, we know how many rebounds he go grab you. This is just a team that for Bruce Pearl, if not now, when? And you've been to the Final Four before at Auburn. You have won SEC tournaments, and you have won SEC regular season titles, but this is a phenomenal shot for Auburn. And I thought that Creighton game could have been their death blow, could have been the end of them. And now they play Michigan. I have all the respect in the world for Dusty May. I'm a huge Dusty May fan. He will not be an easy out. And Dusty May just knows how to win this time of the year. But I would be surprised. I'm not going to say shocked, but I would be surprised if Auburn doesn't beat Michigan. And then if I could go back and change one pick right now, my Final Four, you know, because I did go chalk. I had Houston. I had Duke. And then I also had Florida, with Florida beating Duke. And I probably would still lean that it is going to be Florida and Duke in the championship game, with Duke winning it all. But even though Chris Beard is a phenomenal coach, and even though Tom Izzo, we all know how great of a coach he is, to come out of that region, if I could change a pick right now with what I saw the other day, I would pick Auburn and all 4 number 1 seeds to get to the Final Four. So those to me are the 3 teams with the best chance to win a title. Duke is 1, Florida is 2, and then Auburn is in at number 3. By the way, I was very impressed with the fandom of Rich Ackerman on Friday. Ack is sitting in the newsroom, right, in his little cubby, and he's broadcasting, and Ack is screaming at the television.
I was in broadcast. I was cheering him on.
No, yeah, you weren't broadcasting.
It was exciting. It was a good game.
But you were sitting there watching the game, And
by myself.
Like, you are a professional broadcaster.
Yeah.
Right? You're like, no nonsense. You get in, you do the job, and you're very serious, and you care a lot about the job, obviously, as you should. Mm-hmm. But it's cool to see the fandom. And we've, like, through the years, right? Little Rangers, we'll be on the same page and we'll lose our minds a little bit, but you usually, at least when we're talking, you're mellow.
It's under the surface.
Yeah. UNC, when they were making that run, and I know they came up short, they didn't get the job done on the comeback, but Ack is yelling in the newsroom. We heard him through his little office.
I wouldn't, if I was sitting in the newsroom, I wouldn't have done that.
Yes.
If I was in my little cubby hole where, should be soundproof, but it's not.
But I have seen many days where you have some youngsters that come in here, and there's some youngsters that are a little bit too chatty. Let's just be real, that sit there and they yell and they just want to talk, and it's like, you got to do the job. And Ack will go in there and he'll remind them, being the wise professor that he is, guys, I know it's sports, it's exciting, but you got a job to do. It was nice to see Ack be a kid for a little bit. It was nice to see you celebrate.
A couple of minutes. It was a good comeback. It was worthy of that. And, I think I called it on the air when I said, well, I've seen this Carolina team do it before. And
when it got down to 4, Ack texted me. I was still here because I wanted to watch the end of the game. Ack didn't know I was here yet. And Ack goes, down to 4.
That's right.
So, my condolences, though, for your Tar Heels.
Hey, it happens. I thought they could beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss was better. But just like Clemson, the same thing, you got to play a full 40. And that's what really hurt them in the end. They were just, for whatever reason, whether it was, the previous win that knocked them out and all the travel, they just weren't there in the first half. And you can't do that in the tournament. But, I give them credit. As you know, I'm a Hubert supporter, so they did themselves proud by playing extremely hard in the second half. I think if anybody thought that they could just fold up and it could be a 15-point loss, anybody could have said, well, they really weren't that good. They didn't deserve to be there. They had everything. They took it. The other night's win took everything out of them. But they played hard. Again, that was like also an epitome of Carolina's season. They could shoot the ball lights out, or they could shoot the ball at 20%. And that was what happened.
All righty, we'll come on back. We'll update some of the biggest stories in the world of sports with some audio for a news brief. But first up, with the latest Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash, here's Zach.
Infinity Sports Network Sports Flash.
And it's sponsored by Progressive Insurance. Your small business keeps you on the go. Progressive Commercial Insurance keeps your policy within reach with their easy-to-use mobile app. Learn more at progressivecommercial.com. Iowa moved quickly to name its new head coach and is bringing Ben McCollum back home. The 43-year-old Iowa City native, coming off a terrific season at Drake, is only one at the school where he led the Bulldogs to its first tournament appearance in the round of 32 since 1971. Minnesota lured Nico Medved back home, hiring the Colorado State head coach as its new head man. He had been at Colorado State the last couple of years, leading the Rams to the NCAA tournament 3 times in the last 4 years. Denver opens a 5-game homestand tonight against the Bulls and expect to have Nikola Jokic back at some point during this stretch. The 3-time MVP has missed the last 4 games with an ankle injury. They've gone 2-2 without him holding up okay, and Jamal Murray said they're feeling good for this stretch run.
Confidence never wearies. It's always on the outside that it may vary, but I think in here we're always good. We know what we're capable of. We won a shit before. We know what it takes, and now it's just all about bringing those habits, or trying to keep those habits and get rid of the bad ones going into these last 9 games.
The Lakers, a game behind Denver in the West, opens a road trip in Orlando. I'm Rich Acker.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Time for your daily news brief. We get you caught up on the rumors, reports, and reconnaissance from the day in sports.
It's time to ask the pros, where you, the listener, gets asked us a question that's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Simply tweet your question at INF Sportsnet or at Zach Gelb using the hashtag AskThePros. You could be listening later in the show, or we might answer your question. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. So some in the YouTube chat are saying that I'm loud and that I'm yelling. So we're going to now alter the show, and I'm going to basically just talk like this, like a boring, monotone talk show host. Show no passion, no emotion, no energy, and just put you to sleep. Lullaby, hush, little baby, don't be sad.
Have they not listened to the show for the past?
It's like, folks, what
10
the heck
years?
are we doing? I'm sorry. I'm loud. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a Northeast guy. Sometimes you think I'm yelling, and I'm not yelling. You'll know when I'm really yelling. Alrighty? It's like, what are we doing here? I haven't got that in a while. Like, stop yelling. I haven't got that in a while because people just know what they get at this point.
I've heard you yelling that first segment. If they thought that was yelling, just wait until you get fired up.
You know, how dare I be excited coming off a good college basketball weekend. Here's my guy, John Calipari, his speech to his Arkansas team after they did beat St. John's.
I've done this a long time. I've never had a more rewarding season. And the reason we made it, I said it, we got a bunch of good guys that have been raised right by their families. And they were able to take what happened to us and know they had to become one heartbeat. I can't worry about me. I got to worry about us. And then we had injuries and next man up. After tomorrow night, there's only 16 teams left. Damn. And we're one.
Together on three, family on six. 1, 2, 3. Together. 5, 6.
I'll tell you, him saying that's the most rewarding season he's ever had is really something. Now, Samter got on my ear and he says that every year. Is that right?
No, I'm not saying he says that. Every coach says that every year. This was my favorite team to coach. These are the best guys I've ever been around. These are the guys who I'm going to remember forever. Come on. You can't have that every year. Every coach says it.
So, I actually think for him, I don't know if this is actually his most rewarding year, but he could actually sell it this year because he had to leave Kentucky because they were done with him. And he knew he had to leave. And he goes to Arkansas, and who would have thought they would be in the Sweet 16 in year one? I didn't. So that's why I think he could sell it. Here is Derek Queen on what Kevin Willard has meant to the team. Obviously, Kevin Willard, the men's head basketball coach at Maryland.
What has he meant to you guys in the short time he's been with you?
First, he do pay us the money, and then so we got to listen to him, and we all trust him because he's like a player coach.
Here's why I love that. That's just the state of college basketball right now. And I'm perfectly fine with it. You have the first buzzer beater in the NCAA tournament, and it's Derek Queen, right? And he makes that shot, and it's like, hey, really nice moment after the game. What has Coach Willard meant to you? He paid us the money. That's great. Because that's real. That's authentic. That's genuine. You know, is he going to Maryland if he didn't get a bag of cash? I know that's home, but probably not. He goes somewhere that would give him the bag of cash. So on that play afterwards, in the moment, I didn't see it. But when it gets slowed down, you do see Derek Queen take 3 steps. This is Gene Steratore, CBS, the rules expert analyst, former NFL, college basketball, all that stuff, on Derek Queen's game-winning travel. Should it have been called? Here's Gene.
Look, by rule, the dribble doesn't end until there's firm possession with one hand locked or more times than not with 2 hands. So we've got to look to see when the dribble ends. Derek Queen makes the turn around the loop. At that point, when he brings it back up, we don't know if that's fully possessed. If he bobbles that at that point, he could continue to bobble that basketball all the way to the hoop without a travel. So you've got to wait until you can define firm possession. Now the dribble has ended. As I said, most times than not, it's when both hands come together. You can see when Derek Queen has both hands together, 1 foot hits, next foot, great shot, great ending. To me, it just really doesn't jump off the screen as anything big.
Stu, did you have a problem with the travel not being called?
I did not have a problem. You don't call that in that situation, in my opinion.
Samter, do you have a problem with the travel not being called?
When Gene Steratore says he could bobble that ball all the way to the basket without it being a travel, why don't players just pick up their dribble, bobble the ball for 27 steps and then take another step and go and hit a layup. It's against the rule of the law. Once the ball is off the ground, you take 2 steps. That's it. This idea of he was bobbling a ball, that's a travel.
Have you watched college basketball, the NBA, one time in the last 10 years?
This is how the game is gone.
You got to take 3 steps.
No, you're right. This is how the game is gone. Carries aren't called. These travels aren't called. But they're clearly travels. And on a game-winning play, if they win the national championship or something like that, we're going to look back and say it was cheated.
Did you? Stop it. You know what? I love you, Mike. But you just know how to ruin sports at times. You're going to look back and it's cheated and it's tainted. You sound like one of these idiots on Twitter. That's what you sound like. I'm not sitting here saying that you can't make the case that it isn't a travel. Because you can make the case. When is that ever called? And did anyone actually say that in the moment? Or is it just when you slow it down, you need to... All right, we had all this bitching. We haven't had a buzzer beater. Then we finally get a buzzer beater. Oh, it shouldn't have counted. I didn't have a problem with it live in the moment. When you slow it down, yeah, I could see the 3 steps, like what Mike is saying. But basketball, I know it's 2 steps, but it's kind of just we've all become accustomed to the 3 steps. And how many times do we see something, I guess they just never called traveling, so there's no way the Zebras actually going to call it in that spot. Let's go to Caleb Love of Arizona. CBS now facing Duke next. His thoughts on that with his old squad.
You know them very well from your time in North Carolina. Duke, how do you beat them?
Hey, I just say, we got to go back. We got to watch film. We got to get ready for them. And, we're going to enjoy this win. But, we'll be ready for them when it's time. We'll be ready for them when it's time.
I like that.
Yep.
Meant to say old foe, but I just don't see how Duke loses this game. I thought Arizona almost gagged that game away up against Oregon. They were up by 10. The next thing you know, it's like a 2-point game. And I know that's basketball too. Does Love have one last fight in him? I guess. It's incredible how long he's been around too. There's some guys like Caliph or Khalif Battle, who's now on Gonzaga. I remember him. He was Temple and he transferred into Temple, then went somewhere else. I forget where, and now is on Gonzaga. Arkansas he went to. It's like these guys, because they got an extra year for COVID and all that, and then, if you sit out of here, but this is 5th year in college basketball. 3 years at UNC, 2 at Arizona, but you get one more chance to survive and advance in the big dance, and we'll see if you can beat Duke, but I just don't think that's going to happen. And finally, the Rich Eisen Show, Infinity Sports Network right before us, had Cam Hayward on, and Cam Hayward said the Steelers are in win-now mode.
I think we're in a state of, urgency. We have a lot of guys that, like myself, that are in the latter stages of their career, and we all want to win. It's not just enough to win a playoff game, which we haven't won in a couple years, and there's a bad taste in our mouth because of that.
When you say a couple of years, what's a couple to you, Stu?
That'd be 2.
Okay. Samter, what's a couple to you? Couple of years.
Couple is 2.
And then few, you would say 3 or 4, right?
3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes you could say couple, and I understand it's 2, but all right, I haven't happened. And if you get 3 or 4, that's fine. When you haven't won a playoff game since the 2016 season, that's a lot. So 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, that's 8 years. That's, even if I'm being generous on the couple destination and saying, maybe that's 4, then what the heck is 8 there? That's been a long, long, long time. So Cam Hayward and the Steelers, I think they're going to get Aaron Rodgers. Are they definitely going to win a playoff game with Aaron? No, but he would give them their best chance to do so in a long time. All righty, we'll take a break. When we come on back, the most polarizing man in college basketball, Dan Hurley. You in or you're out on Coach Hurley? I'll give you my answer. Next.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. 4 minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
All righty, hour number 2 of our radio program. That's right, it is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. So over the weekend, we saw Florida survive and advance, really take over the game in the last few minutes. But it was a heck of an effort from the UConn Huskies and from Dan Hurley. And obviously the last 2 years, they've won back-to-back national championships. And then you look at this year, it just wasn't their year with all that they've lost. And you had a lot of new guys coming in, some returners as well. But you knew that this wasn't a dominant UConn team. And I was very curious if UConn would get past Oklahoma, which I thought that they would. How much of a game would they be able to give Florida? Because Florida, heading into the tournament, was playing as one of the best or actually the best team in the country, especially when you won the SEC that put 14 teams in the NCAA tournament, and you won that conference tournament this past year, and how many transfers Florida has and the way that they've quickly come together to just be this dominant team. But, I'm not going to say what Dan Hurley did yesterday in a loss is more impressive than the last 2 years where you win back-to-back national championships, but you see how great of a coach, if you didn't understand how great of a coach Hurley is, you got to see it yesterday, even in a loss. Now, I don't know where you've been the last 2 years if you can't understand how great of a coach he is, but if you're someone that is a Dan Hurley hater and someone that just can't say the guy is an unbelievable coach, they had no business being in that game with Florida, let alone being in control of the game. And I know they ended up losing, and I'm not a participation trophy guy. I don't want to slap someone in the behind just because you find a way to be competitive in a game. But with how much better Florida is, and where UConn is not a championship team this year, and they've displayed that throughout the year, that they're just fine, they're good, they're not very good, they're not great. I will say that when you take a glance and you look at the performance yesterday by Dan Hurley, I thought it was a honorable and admirable way to bow out of the NCAA tournament. They weren't going to win 3 in a row. No one walked into this tournament thinking that they were going to be able to go back to back to back. If they would have beat Florida, it's a different conversation. But even then, even if they beat Florida, do I think they're going to go on to win in the Sweet 16, the Elite Eight, the Final Four, and then the championship game? No, I did not. I just didn't think that they had that team this year. But to be in that game and be in control of that game for pretty much 36, 37 minutes, and then Florida just showed you that it's their time in that game, I thought it was a good way for UConn to go out. That's what I thought. Now, I'm watching Hurley after the game, and I'm watching his interview with Tracy Wolfson, I believe it was, and then I think Tracy was doing the interview, and then I watched his post-game press conference, and I go, this is why I love Dan Hurley. He's emotional. Even after winning 2 championships, he's sitting there, he's crying, and I'm sitting there saying, this is why I'm a fan of Dan Hurley. Sure, can he say some stupid things? Sure, can he rub you the wrong way? But I want a coach who's demanding, who's passionate, even at times if he's petulant, but he goes to a different planet. And like he has a basketball level of psycho in him. When he gets on that sideline, you have no clue what the heck he's going to do. But it's great for college basketball. We've recently lost Coach K to retirement, Roy Williams to retirement, and then the face of the sport would have been Jay Wright after winning 2 championships at Villanova and a bunch of Final Fours, and Jay Wright retires because of NIL. And Calipari, up until this year, the last few years, has been down at Kentucky. Now at Arkansas at the Sweet 16. So the big personality coaches and the big-name coaches have gone through a great transformation, like even Boeheim. And I couldn't stand Boeheim's guts the last 3-4 years of his career. He was insufferable, but that was a big personality coach. So I'm listening to Hurley in the post-game press conference and also to talking to CBS, and I'm like, he's handling this professionally. He's handling this in a mature way that I like for my coach. And then walking off the court, he said some things about the officials. And right after, I literally tweeted out, let me pull up the tweet here, because this is how it just appeared on my timeline. I'm watching the post-game, I'm watching the interviews, I'm watching the press conferences, and I have not seen up until this point the Dan Hurley freak out, walking off the court and just yapping. And I wrote, love him or hate him, the emotions Dan Hurley shows in victory or defeat is great for college basketball. The face of college basketball, glad he didn't take the Lakers job. So here's some of that audio. Not the freak out about the refs, But what made me tweet this out, and then I'll tell you if it changes my opinion at all with what I found out later. This is Dan Hurley on losing to Florida and ending their run for UConn at a three-peat.
They showed their quality. I mean, I thought we played with tremendous honor. I thought we played with the heart of a championship program and a program that's gone back-to-back. And, for a team to end, what we really wanted to do, they were going to have to put us down. And, obviously a worthy opponent like that, there's honor in the way we went out.
What did you tell your team in there?
Just love them. I mean, just love them. This year has been a real battle. We've battled, and at times, I don't think we liked each other a whole lot with some of the things we had to go through together. But I don't think I'll ever love a team more than how hard they fought for what we were trying to accomplish and for the honor they played with today.
So think about it. This is a guy that's the king of the sport right now. He is coming off a loss where the last 2 years they have been NCAA tournament champions. So there's no shame in not getting the three-peat, right? It was extremely unlikely that you were going to three-peat. And that coach displayed so much emotion there in a loss when the dream is over, and most of us even thought it wasn't even fair to dream about that, and you could tell how much he cares. I love that from Dan Hurley. And yes, does Dan Hurley have some crazy antics? Does Dan Hurley say some stupid things? Does he go to a level where he can't control his emotions? Absolutely. But Dan Hurley is unbelievable for college basketball. Dan Hurley is great for college basketball. 50% of the people love him, 50% of the people hate him. And it's not just like, I sort of like him, I sort of hate him. It's either you despise him or you love him like he's a cult leader. And that's what I love about Dan Hurley. And college coaches are the face of their sport in football and in basketball. And when you have emotion, when you have passion, it fits the mold of college. So stop with this nonsense. Oh, Dan Hurley's got to grow up. Oh, he bitches about the officials too much. I want my coach, in the case of Dan Hurley in college, to be brash, to be arrogant. I want him to be a psycho pretty much on the sideline. It's fun. And guess what? You can't say it doesn't work because the guy has won 2 national championships back-to-back at UConn, and he's losing his mind. He's crying, freaking out, going nuts because they didn't win 3 in a row. Think about the hunger. Think about the determination. Think about the fight. Think about the love that Dan Hurley has. So I'm so happy he didn't take the Lakers job. And I'm so happy that he's back at UConn and he went through this season. And I hope he stays in college for the rest of his career, or at least for a decade, because it gives us something that is passionate, is polarizing, and it's something that college basketball has been about for a long time. So I have no problem, really, with Dan Hurley. Now, let me get you one more nice quote. And then even after me just being very happy with Dan Hurley, I will play you something that even I thought was ridiculous. This is Dan Hurley on what his team has meant to him.
They change your life. I mean, men like that change your life. I mean, I was a coach. I don't know necessarily. I was in the hot seat going into 23. You got to ask Dave Benedict. But until these men, until Alex Carabin put on the uniform, and Haas and Sampson, the players change your life when you have such special people.
That's, to me, what Dan Hurley displayed. He's crazy. Don't get me wrong. But he could be crazy in a good way, and then sometimes he just freaks out and it's like ridiculous and it's like wild and it's nuts. But I really do think when he gets on a basketball court, he is so locked in on winning and only winning that when he walks off the basketball court, he almost blacks out. Like, after the game, I'm hearing him talk with that emotion. I go, oh, this is like really sweet. This is nice. This is awesome. Like, you just won back-to-back championships. You don't win this year. And you would have thought that this team has never won a championship. They're not a blue blood, right? You would think that, like, UConn has done nothing, right? With the way that Dan Hurley's sitting up there and crying. And they just won back-to-back championships. And he's freaking out. Like, they've never won a title. They just got to the championship game and lost on a buzzer beater, right? That's how he's acting. So I thought those moments are really cool. I thought those moments were good for Dan Hurley. But then after I praise him, and after I talk about how much I love Dan Hurley, and right, I remember when he was at URI as the head coach and his brother Bobby was on the staff, and I saw a Temple, Rhode Island game at the Liacouras Center. There was like no fans in the building. None. And you hear those two psychos just yelling and going nuts on the sideline. And I was right there. And Fran Dunphy is like the nicest person in the world. He get angry from time to time, like slam his hands together, but he's not like really yelling much. Fran's like a saint, right? And he was quiet, and the Hurleys are just barking the whole game. They had those two knuckleheads on the same staff. Think about that. Oh. And yes, does he sometimes take it too far with the officials? Absolutely. But this is Hurley calling out the refs in the tunnel after the loss. He's walking off the court. They just lost to Florida. And then he is walking past the Baylor team who's about to play Duke, and this is what transpired.
I hope they don't do that to you, Baylor. I hope they don't do that.
He's walking off the court, and he's saying, I hope they don't bleep you like they bleeped us. Now, I was watching the game yesterday. When did UConn really get bleeped by the officials? UConn ran out of steam. UConn ran out of life. UConn reached their apex. So I thought at first maybe that was like an old video, because Hurley, he tends to have these freakouts, if we're just being honest. And that wasn't his first, and it definitely won't be his last. And then when I see he's talking to the Baylor guys, I'm like, oh no, this is the game that's coming up after them. So I guess that's when he's decompressing, walking off the court. And it's just programmed, always rip the officials in his head. Like the officials are Voldemort to him. They are Satan. But man, I was surprised yesterday, even for him, that he was blaming the officials. Here is Dan Hurley. He says he needs to work on himself this offseason.
You know, there's a lot, rewiring and things I got to do in the off season, because you just get caught up in this tidal wave of success that we've had, and you lose perspective. You struggle with the ego at times because you've been on this incredible run. So it'll be nice to get to a normal off season.
So there you go. That's Dan Hurley. It'd be nice to get to a normal offseason. Hey, Coach, have you play me that cutback one more time, Stu? Because I just want to hear it one more time, because that just screams BS to me. Go ahead.
There's a lot, rewiring and things I got to do in the off season, because you just get caught up in this tidal wave of success that we've had, and you lose perspective. You struggle with the ego at times because you've been on this incredible run. So it'll be nice to get to a normal off season.
So he basically said, yeah, I could be a jerk sometimes. That's pretty much what he just said. If you listen to it, he goes, you struggle with the ego, and you struggle basically with being king, and you sometimes take it too far. That's how I translated that. But then that last line, it'll be nice to get back to a normal offseason, Coach. You're breaking down crying a moment ago. Breaking down crying about not winning it all this year after you just won 2 in a row. You can't actually tell me, oh, yeah, you're going to enjoy the offseason more because you guys aren't playing for 2 more weeks. Stop with that. And also, the transfer portal opens up. So, what time do you have to even digest any part of this? So, anyway, here is, this is Gabe McDonald. So, this is Charlotte Sports Live. This is the part I didn't like. Even though I thought it was lame, him running off the court and screaming, hey, Baylor, I hope the refs don't bleep you like they bleep us. So, a reporter is videoing that. And they capture that moment. Dan Hurley knows there's cameras, right? You're walking off the court. So, according to Gabe McDonald, Samter, I haven't heard this audio. Does he explain the whole thing here? Because this is the part that I didn't like. So, instead of me trying to tell you it, let's listen up to Gabe McDonald of Charlotte Sports Live.
Charlotte Sports Live's own Joey Ellis took that video and then was confronted by UConn Director of Communications, Bobby Mullen. Mullen asked for that video that had gone viral to be removed. He then threatened Joey, saying he would, quote, ruin his life if he didn't. This was heard by multiple other reporters and staff on hand. Our management asked Mullen for a statement on the incident, and here's what he said. The lasting image of Coach Hurley leaving the court should have been his walking off the court arm in arm with the seniors. overwhelmed with emotion. Instead, a reporter who was in an area he should not have been recorded on his cell phone a private comment made to members of another coaching staff, end quote. Charlotte Sports Live and Queen City News, stand by Joey Ellis's reporting.
Yeah. Wait, that's Joey Ellis? Hold on. Joey Ellis. How many? No, I think there's a different Ellis that I'm thinking of.
Alfonso Ellis?
No, there's a different Ellis that also covers the Panthers who I knew a little bit when Rule was there. But Joey Ellis is just sitting there post-game, and Hurley's running off like a maniac, mother bleeping the officials, and he records it and puts it out. And hey, I think I know this better than anybody. SID, sports information directors, PR people, they try to control the message. Folks, when something is recorded and you don't have control over it, you can't intimidate people. You can't walk up to someone, and I've had a few encounters with Bobby over the years at UConn. All have been pleasant. Don't have a bad word to say about the guy up until I hear this. Everyone's entitled to a bad day, but you guys are back-to-back national champions. You just lost. I understand you're trying to protect your guy. Wouldn't it have been better by saying, hey, right, if I'm the SID, and the answer still may not be the one that you like, you shouldn't, if he wasn't supposed to be in this area, hey, you shouldn't have been in this area. You obviously were allowed in. You're entitled to record. That was a bad moment for Coach. We would appreciate it if you didn't put it out. That's your best bet. Because if I was in that spot and someone said that to me, maybe I'd have a heart for it. But if you walk up to me and go, you shouldn't have that video, I'm going to ruin your life. Well, then bleep you. I'm posting it. And that's just the truth. And I've had times where we have pre-taped interviews. And people go, oh, can you cut this question out? And I go, guys, it's live to tape. All right? That's what it is. We are taping this as a live segment. Not that I am a traditional journalist, but I do have integrity. And if you don't want something asked, and I know it's different in this case, tell us beforehand, and then we will politely tell you, we don't care how big the name is of the person, we're not interested. And within reason. Like, for example, when Aaron Donald had the helmet swinging incident in practice, I was not told this. But if someone told me, hey, Zach, when I was interviewing Aaron Donald, you can't ask about it, I would say then we can't interview him. Because I have a duty and I have to respond to my listeners, and I have a service to my listeners. And my listeners are going to sit there and they're going to be saying, why the heck did Zach not ask that question? Now, if it's something personal, like, hey, this has happened to me before. So-and-so has an issue with a child that's been reported on publicly. We would ask you not to ask it. That's different, right? I don't need to ask about that. That's a personal matter. So those are things that I would still do an interview, but usually 9.9 times out of 10, if you try to tell me I can't do something in an interview, it just ain't going to work. It's just not going to fly with me. Now, in this case, it's different. You're at a public event. Now, you have a credential, and I don't know if he's in the area or not that he shouldn't have been, but still, he was allowed in that area. And I've covered enough NCAA tournaments. It's very tough to get into a place that you're not supposed to go to. This is the NCAA, the same people that you have a water bottle, they make you pour the water into the cup so you have an NCAA cup. So it's a very meticulous security system. And when you're running right off the court, I don't think that's a restricted area. And I'm assuming he wasn't the only camera there. Your coach should have then conducted himself in a better manner. And quite frankly, Danny Hurley said those things, and Danny Hurley's not someone that's, I was taken out of context, or, I didn't really mean that. Like, that's not, to me, who Dan Hurley is. There's a lot of good, and then there is some bad that comes with Dan Hurley. More good than bad, in my opinion. But the SID's immediate response, if that's true, is I will ruin your life. That's lame. That's low class. But here's the question. 888-710-4ISN. 888-710-4ISN. That's 888-710-4476. Do you like Dan Hurley? And this is the answers. And these are the answers. And I put it in a very specific way. because I think both could be true. Yes, great for college. No, can't stand him. Stu, do you like Dan Hurley? Would you answer it? Yes, great for college. No, can't stand him.
Love Dan Hurley. Great for college.
Okay. Samter, what's your answer here?
Honestly, it depends on my mood. There are days where I hate him, and there are days where I love him.
Okay, that's why it's a great question.
So today, right now, I love him.
Ooh.
But throughout most of the season, I've hated him.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Huh. Oh, yeah. I think the way he talked to the official, I'm the best coach in the country, don't turn your back on me.
Yeah.
I hated that.
I've seen you talk that way to Stu before. How dare you talk to me? I'm the best producer in this building. Just press the button and shut up.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, Stu's not really a human being. So, I can talk to him wherever I need to. It's totally fine.
Samter is the Dan Hurley of our network.
I think people would say I'm more of an a-hole than Dan Hurley.
I didn't say that. You did. Anyway, do you like Dan Hurley? Yes, great for college. No, can't stand him. Razor thin margin. 50.8% say yes, great for college. 49.2% say they can't stand him. At Zach Gelb, at INF Sportsnet on Twitter is where you can find that. You can hit us up on the phone lines. Jump on in 888-710-4ISN. That's 888-710-4476.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. 1 minute remaining. $45 seconds remaining. $30 seconds remaining. $15 seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
You're listening to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
All righty, this is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Josh Pastner going to join us in about 30 minutes from now. We'll go over the weekend that was in college basketball, talk some coaching cycle too, and we'll advance it forward to the Sweet 16 with him as well. So looking forward to that conversation in about 30 minutes. A report came out over the weekend from Jeremy Fowler that Bengals star defensive end Trey Hendrickson may sit out the entire 2025 season if he doesn't get a new deal, per Jeremy Fowler. I think it's entirely possible, on what I'm hearing, for him to sit out this year if he doesn't get a new deal. I think that's his mindset right now. So here's my thing. Trey Hendrickson is a grown man. Trey Hendrickson can proceed however he wants. And I may like it. I may dislike it. But with how it's gone, the last two notable holdouts, in terms where like a lot of games were missed that I can remember. Le'Veon Bell missed an entire season. Never was the same player. So you could say, oh, it's a running back, Zach. Like, you know, it's not the same position. Well, Hassan Reddick was 4 straight years, double-digit sacks. Hassan Reddick was dominant in an Eagles run to a Super Bowl. And I know last year didn't go the way that the Eagles wanted it to, and they eventually bounced back and won the Super Bowl. But Hassan Reddick thought he deserved more money, got traded to the Jets. I don't know how it exactly went down, but the way that I understand it is that he claimed he was going to show up, and then if he did some things, and maybe the Jets would talk a new deal, or they would just table it to next year. And then the Jets traded, I believe it was John Franklin Myers, to the Broncos. And I think that opened it up saying, oh, they actually need me more. I may have more leverage here. And Hassan Reddick missed some games. And then Hassan Reddick, when he was back, didn't really have any moments for the Jets. And now is on a 1-year deal in Tampa Bay. So Hassan Reddick could have played this year, could have done well, and then could have cashed in on a payday potentially instead of having to take a 1-year deal. And you lost a lot of money, and what did you really accomplish? So Trey Hendrickson is a phenomenal football player. Trey Hendrickson led the NFL in sacks last year, 17.5, back-to-back seasons of 17.5 sacks. If it gets to the level of sitting out and missing games, I don't think Trey Hendrickson is going to get himself really any closer to getting a new contract and doing so with the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, if you recall, Chris Jones, he sat out that opening night game. Was it against Detroit? I think it was Detroit. I can't remember. I think it was Detroit. He sat out the opening night game in the luxury box, and then they got the deal done pretty much the next day. So, all right, if you sit out, I guess it can work. But Chris Jones also has won Super Bowls in this league. Now, Trey Hendrickson the last 2 years has been phenomenal as a pass rusher. But you're 1 year away from hitting free agency. So if you have another good year, will someone give you a 3-year contract next year, even though you're getting up there in age? I would have to imagine. And I understand why you want that money now. And I'm not saying that the Bengals shouldn't pay you more now, but that's just for 1 more year that they may only be able to be willing to pay you. If the Bengals say, hey, we're not doing a 2, 3-year, 4-year extension with you, and we're only willing to give you a year and bump up your salary this year, Trey Hendrickson could say, hey, I want to get traded, and he's already said it. Get me out of here. And the Bengals have every right to tell you, we're not trading you. I know we just paid Joe Burrow. I know we just paid T. Higgins. I know we just paid Jamar Chase. We need you on defense. And you either show up and play for us, or we're going to suspend you, or you're going to sit out. You're not going to get your money this year. You're going to waste the season. And are people rushing to pay a guy that turns 31 in December, even with how good he is? Are people going to rush to go give you a multi-year deal a year from now? I don't think so. So I understand why you issue the threat. I understand why you leak this report if it's true. I understand why you try to put that out there now. But ultimately, Trey Hendrickson, in sports now that have been more player-friendly, right? Player empowerment. Usually when a player requests out, you go, oh, they're going to get what they want. They're going to get traded. Like Myles Garrett, we all thought he was getting traded. Even when the Browns said, yeah, we're not trading. And the Browns said, okay, we're going to open up a bag of cash and drop off a bag of cash at your door that you just can't refuse. But I think Trey Hendrickson wants to stay in Cincinnati, but he wants to get paid by the Bengals. I get it. I understand Trey Hendrickson. But I don't still think he has a lot of leverage here because the Bengals could play hardball with him, and I don't think you accomplish a lot outside of saving your body, which some could argue that's a lot, but we know Trey Hendrickson wants to play, and he wants a big deal. If you're telling me the objective is to get a big deal, does it behoove you to sit out this season? No, I don't. So you could threaten that now, and maybe Cincinnati on draft night, they get a call, and they go, okay, we'll give up whatever, and the other team's willing to pay Trey Hendrickson, and it stinks for us. We'll still put up a lot of points, may not be able to stop anybody, and you may get rid of him. But I still think there's a way to rectify this and to push it for another season, like they did last year. But I could understand how messy this is, and Trey Hendrickson now sees, hey, Joe Burrow got paid, Jamar Chase got paid, and T. Higgins. What about me? Because last year, I had 17.5 sacks, led the league in sacks. Jamar Chase just had the triple crown, so you can't tell me, oh, we didn't win enough games, and that's why you're not paying me. Jamar Chase just led the league in receiving. He got paid. Joe Burrow led the league in passing yards, pass touchdowns. He got paid a year ago. He's the quarterback. I get it. But T. Higgins is number 2 wide receiver on this team. He just got paid. So why am I not getting paid? So I understand Trey Hendrickson's frustration, but if it goes to the level where Fowler says, I think it's entirely possible based on what I'm hearing for him to sit out the year if he doesn't get a new deal, I think that's his mindset right now. That could be your mindset right now. But is that your mindset in September? Like, okay, off-season program, all that stuff, fine is your mindset. When the games start, when they start to count, not preseason bull crap, not OTAs, all that bull crap, all that monotonous junk. When the games start to count, you still want to sit out? You still willing to miss game checks? Because I don't think missing game checks does you really any good. So I'm curious how this is going to go. About 2 weeks ago, I was like, he's not going to be back in Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati's willing to get a little messy here. I don't think they're afraid to get a little messy here. All righty, Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network. We'll take a break. Come on back, a little onside, offside update time first. Here's Zach.
Infinity Sports Network. Sports Flash.
Well, the coaching carousel continues today in college basketball with Iowa naming Ben McCollum its new head coach. The 43-year-old Iowa City native returns home after 1 year at Drake, in which he led the Bulldogs to the round of 32 for the first time since 1971. He also has 4 championships at the Division II level. Minnesota hired Colorado State's Nico Medved. 51-year-old is also going home as a Minnesota native and led the Rams to the tournament 3 of the last 4 years. The NBA playoffs are about a month away, and the Celtics are gearing up for another run, starting their longest road trip of the season with back-to-back wins, stretching their winning streak to 5. They're in Sacramento tonight. Head coach Joe Mazzulla said he wants his team treating this stretch as if the playoffs have begun.
Just the things that impact winning. So the approach we bring, the competitiveness that we bring, the attention to detail that we bring, it all has to remain the same, because you can't turn that on and off. So, guys have done a good job of that. We need to continue to do that.
They won last night without Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, and Drew Holiday. The Lakers, who are emerging as a challenger in the West, take on the Magic in Orlando to start a road trip. And Minnesota, half game behind the idle Warriors for the 6th and final guaranteed playoff spot in the West. They'll take on the Pacers in Indiana. I'm Rich Akram.
The Infinity Sports Network is on your smart speaker. All you have to say is, play Infinity Sports Network.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Zach's taking on the most polarizing issues in sports. Which side of the line of scrimmage will he end up on?
Offside. Defense number 69.
It's Onsides, Offsides with Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, this is Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. By the way, I got to shout out a listener, Daryl. So Daryl sent me a Patriot hat a few weeks ago. Now, the problem was the hat that Daryl sent me did not fit my cabeza, and it was a fitted hat. So Daryl called the station. We got in contact. I said, really appreciate the gift. Just letting you know it doesn't fit the hat that you sent. I go, no problem. I'll give it to someone. Really appreciate it. Really nice of you to think about me. He goes, no, I'm sending you back a new hat. Now, this hat, it fits. And it's a very nice Patriot hat. Now, I'm going to sound very lame here. I don't want to mess up my hair for the Josh Pastner interview, so I'm not going to put the hat on. But I appreciate him sending me the Pat the Patriot hat. You didn't like that line, Samter? You shook my head when I said I don't want to mess up my hair. You actually don't think the hat fits? Why can't I say that?
Your hair is pretty short. That I don't think you're messing up your hair for the interview.
Well, it's like combed. It would be messed up. It's combed. You know, I know that you can't really see all the way up there because you're all the way down there, but geez Louise, it's a very nice hat, and I appreciate it. And I thank Daryl for listening to the show every day and the very kind things that he did say. Man, Santa's just like throwing a lot of punches today. You know, we may have to put him on a load management day tomorrow. Anyway, onside, offside time. Appreciate Daryl sending the hat. Also, programming note, tomorrow, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Head coach, Ole Miss basketball, Chris Beard, makes his triumphant return to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Talked to him a bunch through the years at Texas Tech, also when he was briefly at Texas. I remember he called me into the show when we were doing overnights. The night they punched the ticket to the Final Four at Texas Tech, and he was like, hey, anyone listening, please meet me at the airport and give me a Whataburger. You know, and he gave them the order. You know, just threw it out there. So that's a coach that I like. Chris Beard, one of the best coaches in the country. Do appreciate him agreeing to join us tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time. But anyway, Stu, what do you got for today on Onside Offside?
All right, so the Vikings have been linked to Aaron Rodgers, but the more time passes, the less likely it seems that Rodgers will follow Brett Favre to Minnesota. So now the Vikings are reportedly talking to former Dolphins and Titans quarterback Ryan Tannehill to back up J.J. McCarthy next year, despite Tannehill sitting out the entire 2024 season. Onsides, offsides, Tannehill is a good backup option for the Vikings.
Yeah, onsides, you're the backup. If you got to go to your backup, you're not going to be in a good spot. I know people are going to say, oh, well, JJ was supposed to be the starter last year, and they went to Sam Darnold. You can't recreate magic like that each and every year. If you're going to a quarterback too consistently, that's not good. Tannehill's fine. He's competent. Even though he didn't play last year, I would not bring in Aaron Rodgers. I would start J.J. McCarthy. So you can't bring Aaron Rodgers in as a backup. So I'm fine with Tannehill at this stage being the backup for the Minnesota Vikings. The only one that I would think is better is Russ, but I don't think Russ is going there if he's not guaranteed to start. And I don't think Russ is going to get the guaranteed starting position in Minnesota, because if that was the case, you would just sign Aaron Rodgers. So Tannehill is a good backup for the Vikings. Yeah, I'm good with that on sides. Now, I just did read a report from JPA Football, it's one of those aggregators, that Aaron Rodgers is searching for a team that has a culture such as the one the Packers have, so they could join the best situation to play football with and win, per Albert Breer. It seems like Rodgers' preference is the Vikings, but they don't appear interested. All right, that's fine. How much different is the Packers culture to the Steelers culture then? I think that's both very similar. Now, if you tell me the Giants, I don't think the Giants have a culture. So, once again, this is Aaron just desperately saying, all right, Vikings, give you one more chance. Please change your mind. And they keep on saying, no. So let's stop the drama and just go to the Steelers. Anyway, what do we got cooking next?
The Oklahoma City Thunder are running away with the Western Conference, winning 6 straight to extend their lead to 13.5 games over number 2 seed Houston. And they've already clinched the number 1 seed with 11 games to go. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander leads the NBA in scoring at 32.8 points per game and is second to Jokic in PER at 31.16. Now, for most of the year, Jokic was leading the MVP odds, but he has now been overtaken by SGA, who now sits at -900, while Jokic is second at +475. Onsides, offsides, SGA is a top 4 player in the NBA.
If I were to just ask you and trim this down, who the 3 best players in the NBA are, Stu, who would you say?
I would say it would be Jokic for sure, and then SGA would be in that top 3 as well, with probably Giannis.
And then if you had to give a fourth?
I would probably go Luka.
Ooh, not LeBron.
4. No, not LeBron anymore.
I would definitely have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in my top 4. SGA, Giannis, Nikola Jokic, without question, are the top 3 of the top 4 players in the NBA. At this stage, I still think I'd give it to LeBron with what he's doing. At that age, it's unbelievable. I know he's been out recently, but it's still incredible. I can't crush you for Luka. I think you're on the right path as well. So SGA is a top 4 player in the NBA, absolutely on sides. Go win the MVP. How can you not be a top 4 player in the NBA if you're going to win the MVP? So on sides.
The Cavs led the East all year long, holding double-digit leads over the Celtics multiple times. However, the Cavs just snapped a 4-game losing streak, while the defending champs have won 5 straight and have shrunk the Cavs' lead to just 5 games. Onsides, offsides, the Celtics will be the number 1 seed in the East.
I'm still going to say that the Cavs will be the number 1 seed, but if you ask me who's getting to the NBA Finals out of the Eastern Conference, I would say it's the Celtics over the Cavs. I think the seeding is irrelevant to the Boston Celtics, and it's a lot more important to the Cleveland Cavaliers. And Cleveland right now is 57-14, and they got a 5-game cushion. You still should be able to protect that, and I think that they will. But ultimately, I still think Boston's going to the NBA Finals until proven otherwise. So the Celtics will be the number 1 seed in the East. That question, I go offside.
Offside.
The SEC set a college hoops record with 14 teams in the NCAA tournament, and after a slow 8-6 start in the first round, the cream is rising to the top. The SEC has 7 of the Sweet 16 teams, including number 1's Auburn and Florida, number 2's Tennessee and Alabama, as well as number 3 Kentucky, number 6 Ole Miss, and number 10 Arkansas.
Pig suey!
Onsides, offsides, you would bet that an SEC school wins it all over the field.
Let's just do this as an exercise, Stu. Auburn, Michigan, Ole Miss, Michigan State. Auburn, Michigan, Ole Miss, Michigan State. Who comes out of that region?
In my bracket, I have Michigan State, so I'll stick with that.
Okay. Florida, Maryland, Texas Tech, Arkansas.
Florida.
All righty. Kentucky, Tennessee, good old Rocket Tap. Houston or Purdue?
Houston.
And the Dukies, Arizona, BYU, Alabama.
And Duke.
Okay. So I could argue now Auburn, even though I had Michigan State. But I think Auburn, if I had to redo it, they would be my pick. When I look at Florida, Maryland, Texas Tech, Arkansas, I think we're going to get Arkansas up against Florida. I would still say Florida. Kentucky, Tennessee, Houston, Purdue. Oh. I'll say third time's a charm for Tennessee. Houston, though, goes to the Natty. Goes to the Final Four, excuse me. And Duke, Arizona, BYU, Alabama. I would take Duke. So even in that new exercise, I gave you 2 SEC teams that would play up against one another. So one would be in the championship game, and then I gave you Duke, who's an ACC team, in Houston. And even if I'm wrong on one of that, and I even put a third SEC team in there, like let's say Tennessee, I think as long as Duke beats Alabama, that we will see Duke in the national championship game. That is, if Alabama beats BYU. This is to me, this question is SEC or Duke. Right? I think Houston has a chance to win a national championship. I know they're not in the SEC or they're not in the ACC, but this to me is the SEC or Duke. That's how I dumb this down. And you asked me, you would bet an SEC school wins it all over the field. I'm still going offsides. Until someone takes down Duke in this tournament, I'm still thinking the Dukies run to Houston, run to San Antonio and hoist up the national championship trophy for John Shire.
Offside.
Since Rick Barnes left Texas, the Longhorns haven't seen the success that they were hoping for from coaches like Shaka Smart, Chris Beard, or Rodney Terry. Now, after the program fired Terry over the weekend, reports indicate that they are close to hiring Xavier head coach Sean Miller. Not a long-time Arizona Wildcats coach, Miller has a career 71% winning percentage, but has never made the Final Four and left Tucson after the Adidas scandal rocked the program. Onsides, offsides, Miller will lead Texas back to a perennial top 10 team.
So here's the thing. They got the money, right? And I saw some Xavier fans, and I understand they're frustrated, like, Sean Miller left us once. We threw him a lifesaver when he needed one, and now he left us again. Like, can I crush him for going to Arizona? And can I crush him for going to Texas? No and no. And I love Big East hoops. No offense to Xavier. But I can't crush him for doing that. I think Sean Miller is a heck of a coach. We've seen Sean Miller at Xavier multiple times be a heck of a coach. We've seen him at Arizona be a heck of a coach. Do I think that he could be a perennial top 10 team with Texas with him as the head coach? Absolutely. I will go on sides. And quite frankly, Chris Beard was going to be well on his way on doing that, and then you know what happened with him off the court. But Miller will lead Texas back to the perennial top 10 team. I don't see why I would bet against it. I would go on sides.
All right, last one. Another big name job is available, and that is Villanova. And there are plenty of big names being floated out there, most notably UCLA's Mick Cronin and Maryland's Kevin Willard. And, of course, we remember, as we played on Friday, Willard calling out his athletic department last week for being cheap.
I need to see fundamental changes done. I also have to make a fundamental change where I can do the things that I want to do with my program. You know, I wanted to spend an extra night in New York this year to celebrate Christmas with my team, and I was told that we can't do that because it's too expensive. I don't know how we can be a top-tier program and I can't spend one extra night in New York because it's too expensive.
So, onsides, offsides, you believe that either Cronin or Willard should leave their current jobs for Villanova?
Kevin Willard, no. I would not. Mick Cronin was always a question if he fit UCLA. And you even hear that he maybe wants to get off the West Coast. I think for Mick Cronin, that he would be a really good hire for Villanova. I think Mick Cronin is in play for Villanova. Richard Pitino is in play for Villanova. And a lot of people keep on throwing out Porter Moser, who I could argue, even though he hasn't had this great success at Oklahoma and they just finally made the NCAA tournament, that a guy like Porter Moser would be a better fit at Villanova than Oklahoma. So you believe either Cronin or Willard should leave their current jobs for Villanova? Willard, no. Mick Cronin, yes. So therefore, since it's either or should leave their current job, I would go on side, but I answer it that very particular way. Alrighty, we will take a break. A man that knows John Calipari very well is Josh Pastner. He's going to join us on the other side. We will talk Duke. We will talk Florida. We'll talk Chris Beard. We will talk Arkansas. We will talk Kentucky. We will talk Danny Hurley. We got a whole lot to do with Josh Pastner on the other side, the former basketball coach at Georgia Tech and also Memphis, did play for Arizona. So there's a whole lot more to do. We got an hour left to play on a very busy Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show, coast to coast on the Infinity Sports Network across hundreds of radio affiliates, Sirius XM, channel 375, the Sirius XM app. Obviously, you can find it in 375, the free Odyssey app, I should say, and also streaming on YouTube. And you can always hit us up on social media at Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB, Twitter and Instagram. And you can give us a call, 888-710-4ISN, 888-710-4476. But we talked to Josh Pastner in 5 minutes about a crazy weekend in college basketball when we return.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
To infinity and beyond.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show. Here's your host, Zach Gelb.
Alrighty, hour number 3 of our radio program. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. What a great round of 32 we got to see on Saturday and Sunday. And now we have a lot of great teams still alive in the Sweet 16. Only one double-digit seed remains, and it's Coach Cal with Arkansas. So that's not your traditional double-digit seed that's still playing in a Sweet 16. We'll go out to the guest line right now. Welcome in a man that won an NCAA championship as a player with Arizona, also coached for many years with Memphis and Georgia Tech, and that's our pal Josh Pastner back on the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Coach, appreciate the time as always. Thanks for it. How you been?
Zach, great to be with you, and some, as you mentioned, some Great games this past weekend. Looking forward to a great Sweet 16. Let me also say this. I know a lot of people are talking about the lack of upsets or the lack of exciting games other than the Maryland Colorado State game yesterday with the buzzer shot by Derek Queen. Here's the truth to it all. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the mid-major schools, the players who are 22, 23, they'd be juniors and seniors, and they wanted to stay at the school. There was no portal. There was no NIL. You could just keep them as an older group of guys. And then what happens when you play a team that's from a power conference, those teams maybe had some younger freshmen. Their roster was different. And so that's where you saw the upsets. And now when you're at a mid-major school, or I shouldn't say a mid-major, a non-school out of the Power 4 conferences or Power 5 if you include the Big East, and when someone who had their first year has a great year, averages 11 a game, they're going to go in the portal, and then one of the schools in the power conferences are going to pay them money to take them because they can pay them more than that current school. And so it's a combination of that. The lower seeded teams this year did not shoot well from 3-point range during the tournament. And the third thing, when you talked about Arkansas being the Cinderella team as a 10th seed, they've got maybe more NIL this year than anybody remaining in the tournament. So there's really not that many Cinderella stories. I've said it from the beginning. This tournament was going to be top heavy, and that's where it is. It's a power conference tournament in these 16 remaining teams. And even though we maybe didn't get some of the elite game, buzzer beaters, crazy games in the first couple of rounds, I think we're going to get that in these next couple rounds because of the parity at that top of the food chain in college hoops.
Yeah, I said it after the first round. I thought it was an underwhelming first round, but with how many great teams are still alive, I thought it was going to be an epic Sweet 16 and on. I was very pleased, though, with the round of 32. Let's start it off, though, with Maryland. Everyone's dissecting this game-winning shot. It was an incredible ending, Maryland, Colorado State. Do you think Queen traveled? Do you ever expect that to be called in that moment?
Zach, I mean, you could slow-mo it, and it looks like a travel on the slow-mo, but when you watch in real time, it does not look like a travel.
Agreed.
They talk about the word gathering or picking up the dribble. You're not going to call it. It was not an evident travel. Yes, slow-mo it. It could be a travel. But, some of the new rules moving forward in college basketball has been if there's a question mark on a traveling call, if there's even a gray area, it favor the offense. It's just like the block charge call. You see there's very few charges called anymore. It's all mostly blocks because they want to favor the offense. So it was the right decision not to call it. In the real time, it did not look like it, and it was a heck of a game. What was interesting was when Maryland was up and Colorado State was coming down, Maryland was in man-to-man. Then Colorado State called timeout. Maryland came out in zone, and Colorado State hits that three. Maryland inbounds the ball, rushes up the court, and I didn't know if Kevin Willard, the coach of Maryland, was going to take a timeout. Decided to take a timeout. They kind of they called it America's play or a gate or an elevator play, where on the side of the lane line, the guys go through two guys, and then Queen it was a decoy. Queen came up, caught it, went to his left with the shooter in the left corner, and he hit it was a great defense, but better offense. And most right-handers, Queen is a right-hander, they prefer to shoot off the dribble going to their left. And that's what Queen did, and hit an incredible shot off the backboard which as you know this, Zach, you covered basketball your whole life. People rarely use the backboard anymore. And that's a kind of a lost art. And it was two lost arts. He hit a mid-range shot, and he hit a shot off the backboard, which you don't see too often in basketball anymore.
Josh Pastner here with us. Coach Pitino, we all know how much of a legend Rick Pitino is, and it's incredible what he did with St. John's. But when your season ends and you're not the last team standing, you always get criticized. 5 minutes left in the game, he takes the Big East Player of the Year, R.J. Lewis, out, never puts him back in. Did you think that was a bad decision looking back at it when he didn't have it, the kid? He was 3 of 17, but would you rather go down swinging with your best, or do you understand what Coach Pitino was doing there?
Look, and you know this, Zach, as well as anybody. I mean, Coach Pitino's maybe the greatest ever to coach in college basketball. I mean, he could be considered the greatest coach ever. So I preface this to say that look, he had his reasonings why. And I think in that situation, when you're literally in a one-game playoff, regardless of how bad RJ Lewis was, because look, he was terrible leading up to that point. There was no denying it. But he was Big East Player of the Year, one of the best players in the country. In my personal opinion, you just got to roll with him. And at some point, yeah, you got to maybe take him out because he was stinking up the gym and how poorly he was playing. But then in crunch time, you just got to say, hey, man, we're going to go with you. And you got to hope his stardom, his talent, his abilities take over and make a big shot or two late down the stretch. So I was surprised that he was on the bench based on who he is as a player in that crunch time situation. I don't know how Coach Pitino feels waking up the next morning thinking, should I have him in? Yes, he wasn't good leading up to that. But you know this, Zach, with talent, great players, or even if they have in a poor game, you're probably going to usually roll with them even very late. And all they need to make is one or two shots to change the dynamics of it. It was sort of like Walter Clayton Jr. at Florida. He was a little struggling up and down, then late in the game took over. And that's kind of what great players do. And I was surprised that he wasn't in.
All right, let's get to the Arkansas side of it as Coach Josh Pastner is here with us. John Calipari, really well working with him back at Memphis. We'll look at the difference a year makes, and it's even more than that. I thought it was time for Coach Cal to leave Kentucky. I thought it was time for Kentucky to bring somebody else in. He goes to Arkansas. We know the connections there with the NIL money and all that stuff. I didn't see this team get into a Sweet 16 if you would have told me that a month ago or even a week ago. But it's nice to see Coach Cal, I've always been a big fan of, have this moment when a lot of people, deservedly so the last few years, were questioning him.
Well, you remember about a year ago, I was on your show and I said that, look, and this was before, right as he left, I said, I told you, look for Scott Drew to possibly the next coach of Kentucky.
Yeah.
And before anybody, and you said, Josh, I called it, which he was. They obviously went after him. They wanted him. And obviously he ended up turning it down. But it's worked out for Kentucky because Mark Popes obviously has done a great job. Yes, I think going back to John Calipari, it was probably a great opportunity for him for a fresh start, as you mentioned. What I would tell you is I think this is his best coaching job. Zach, and he said this many times, and he's funny when he says it. They were 0-5 in start of SEC play. And he says, they had us in the coffin. They just didn't put the nails down. You know what I mean? They forgot to put the nails, and we kind of pushed up the coffin, was able to come out and get fresh air. But you're 0-5 in that league. It's not like you're saying, okay, we're going to get a win here. We got 2 easy games here. You could literally go 0-18 in that league because of that the competition and how strong the league is. And so it's an incredible coaching job. I think the whole season got turned around, Zach, when they won at Kentucky.
Agreed.
And I think that changed everything. And I actually texted Cal this afterwards. If you saw him after the game, the way he ran from the game to the locker room and did the post-game interview, he was running and he wasn't even out of breath. That's when you know his adrenaline was running at such a level, because to win that game at Kentucky, and the guy's won so many big games in his career when you think it's not going to happen, and all of a sudden he wins games. And so for them to go to the Sweet 16, and he's said it yesterday, it's probably his most rewarding season that he's coached in all his years. The guy's a Hall of Famer. And you know what, Boogie Flan, I want to say 2 things on Boogie Flan. Their star freshman who's going to be a first-round draft pick. Boogie Flan, they were not playing well when Boogie Flan was playing early in the year, got injured. That's when they started turning the corner. Why? A guy like John L. Davis started understanding his role more, got the ball more. It was actually you don't want to see anyone get hurt, obviously, but it actually helped Arkansas when Boogie Flan wasn't playing. It shortened the rotation. Some older guys got the ball in their hands, Wagner and John L. Davis, where they needed to, and they produced. And then secondly, Boogie Flan, credit to Boogie Flan, plays his first game after all season long being injured, plays his first game coming off the bench in the first round of the tournament. He doesn't need to play. He's going to be a first-round pick. But you know what? Credit to him. He wasn't worried about what the NBA was saying. It could hurt his stock, anything like that. He wanted to play, and I thought that showed a lot of character of him and competitive excellence. Because as you know, Zach, a lot of guys, you see it in football or whatever, they don't want to play because they don't want to mess up their draft situation. He could have easily done that by him playing. I thought showed a lot about him as a competitor.
And it's also pretty neat when you look back at it, because usually, right, one team wins, one team loses in sports, Josh Pastner. To see Mark Pope then go to Kentucky once Arkansas ended up getting Cal, and then also you had Kevin Young replace Mark Pope at BYU. To see all three of those schools in the Sweet 16 now, I think it's pretty neat stuff, and it's a special storyline to kind of follow the rest of March.
Well, it all started when the coach at SMU, Rob Lanier, who's now the head coach at Rice, who's a very good basketball coach, was very successful at Georgia State and was doing a nice job at SMU, but then was let go unexpectedly. Nobody saw that coming. And like I said, he's now the head coach at Rice, which had then allowed Andy Enfield to be hired at SMU, which opened up USC for Eric Musselman to go to USC, Cal to go to Arkansas because Musselman left Arkansas. That brings in Mark Pope from BYU to Kentucky, and then Kevin Young from the Phoenix Suns, top assistant NBA, who was involved with a possible New Jersey Nets job or some NBA jobs, or the Brooklyn Nets, and he turned that down to go to BYU, and that was the dominoes of it all. Just funny how dominoes work in the coaching ladder.
No doubt about it. I thought Auburn was also a big winner this weekend. I would have, if you would have asked me a month ago who's going to the championship game, I would have said Duke up against Auburn. Sign me up. And then the way that their season ended, losing 3 out of their last 4, even though the SEC is unbelievable, I was questioning Auburn a little bit. What they did up against Creighton, not only was I very impressed by it, I think the world had a Dusty May, and they won't go down without a fight. Beard and Izzo are phenomenal, but now I'm kind of back on the train that Auburn's going to be getting to the Final Four. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think the 4 teams are going to be Auburn, Florida, Houston, Duke. I think Houston wins it all, but I do think Duke's really good, Zach. I mean, they're at another level right now.
I can't pick against them right now. I can't pick against Duke.
No. And I pick in Houston just because I kind of went with them at the beginning, but I think Duke's really good. And I picked Houston because I wasn't sure about Cooper Flagg's health going into the tournament. Watching them play, if I could redo my whole picks, I would pick Duke, that they're going to win the whole thing. They've got the number 1 draft pick in Cooper Flagg. They got multiple pros. They got older guys. The only thing with Houston that concerns me is that they're playing in Indianapolis. They're playing Purdue, which is going to be a road game for Houston on this weekend. And then if they get by that, Tennessee and Kentucky advance to the Elite Eight, and Houston's play them. That's the fans are driving distance to Indianapolis from there. That could be the only thing that would scare me on Houston of getting out. But I still think Houston's so good. That all being said, if I could redo it over, seeing now that Cooper Flagg, the health that he's healthy, I just can't see Duke not winning the whole national title.
You know how tough it is in that SEC this year, and you've talked about this. People are going to say, everyone's analysis, Kentucky and Tennessee, it's so tough to beat a team 3 times in a season. Make the argument to me why Kentucky can do that, and they could hand Tennessee their 3rd loss of the season up against Kentucky.
Yeah, I would put it, Zach, I think you would have to throw that stat out for this particular time. I think it maybe matters when, in maybe in the conference tournament, because, 3 times and, no matter what happens, you're going to play again in the NCAA tournament. It's not the end. I think for that stat, a 3-time deal, you kind of throw it out based on it's do or die for either team. The loser's done, the winner advances. So you're kind of just starting fresh. It's a 1-game playoff. So I don't put as much stock in beating a team 3 times in this situation because it's a neutral court. It's a different deal. That being said, it's all going to come down to, can Kentucky defend at a high level, take out Ziegler and Chaz Lanier, and obviously Gainey's really good, but being able to guard that backcourt, which Kentucky has had struggles this year on the defensive end. It's never been about offense. It's been about, can they win? To me, if it was a muck it up, grind it out, tough, hard-nosed, ugly game, can they win that through defense? That's to be determined. That could be the game against Tennessee. I do think Tennessee gets by them when it's all said and done. Yes, Tennessee lost both of them. And if you look back at both games when Kentucky beat Tennessee, Kentucky's offense was zooming and zipping. And I mean, the way they were moving the ball and hitting threes, you've got to imagine Tennessee is going to be just different in how they prepare and what they're going to do, and really try to be as physical as possible against Kentucky. Both teams are familiar with each other, but I do like, in the end, I do like Tennessee in this game.
Wrapping up with Josh Pastner, it's tough to be able to find a team right now that's been playing better than Florida entering the tournament. They got a scare up against UConn, but I feel like whenever a team wins a national championship, for most of the time, I know UConn could be an exception with what they've done the last few years, you usually get a scare and win a game that you should probably lose. You knew Hurley was not going to go down without a fight. It was incredible how much control they were in the game, but what Florida did in those final few minutes, I thought that was maybe the most impressive thing they've done all season, and I understand they just won the SEC Conference Tournament.
Well, Zach, I always say that to win a national championship, you have to go through a scary, just, tough, hard-nosed game where you think you're about to lose. It's just it was just a scary game. One of the few exceptions, which you make a great point, is the non-stress that UConn had the last 2 years winning a national title. They really had no stress. It was surreal. They were never tested, really, other than the San Diego State game, which was like within 5 points late. Other than that, it was nothing. They were dominating every game. So for Florida to get by a high-stressed game and they were down and found a way to win, I do think is a good sign for Florida. You're right, Zach. They're the hottest team in the country coming into this tournament. They are very deep. They've got great players. They've obviously got a great guard in Walter Clayton Jr. You need to have a scare. They got through their scare. I don't see they're going to have any more scares getting into San Antonio in the Final Four.
I know Dan Hurley is not everybody's cup of tea, as I'm holding a cup of tea right now in my hands. But with that being said, I love Dan Hurley. I love his antics. I say this.
Zach, you need a character in college basketball, and he's a good character. You need that. A lot of those guys have retired. So, and I don't say a character in a bad way. Like his enthusiasm, his work in the referees, some of the things he says. You need that. And you know what?
He's the king of the sport. It's polarizing, and you need that. You need a personality coach.
He's polarizing. He's got the personality. He's won back-to-back national champion. I mean, winning one national championship's hard. Winning back-to-backs, literally, you have a better chance of winning the lottery. So he's going to be in the Basketball Hall of Fame. I get it. You can criticize. There's things that he can be better at, but you know what? We don't need it to be a boring sport either. You know what I mean? And college basketball should be about the coaches. Listen, it's a player's game, but you get what I'm saying. You need some personality on the sideline, and he can back it up with all he's got to do is pull out his rings.
Yeah, two rings, Baldy, as he said, walking off the court against Creighton. That actually may be my favorite answer you gave us, because I didn't even get to finish asking the question. You already knew what I was going to ask you. All righty, coaching cycle, then we'll let you run. Indiana got DeVries, Sean Miller, Texas, Will Wade, NC State, Ryan Odom, Virginia. I'll be curious to see what Villanova does. What stands out to you so far in this crazy college coaching cycle?
Well, there early on, there were just some things hiring some former NBA guys coming. Obviously Alex Jensen at Utah, assistant with the Dallas Mavericks. Luke Lucas, something like, I don't want to mispronounce his name, at Florida State, who was a Sacramento former alum. Both guys are alums of their schools, respectively, coming from the Sacramento Kings. But look, this is part of the cycle. Villanova's open right now. West Virginia's open right now, which will create some other dominoes. Colorado State's open right now. So those will create some other dominoes. It's all part of the deal. And we'll see what happens as more people get hired. Xavier's open. It's part of it. So, we'll see if Chris Mack has ended up being the Xavier coach again. I could see Luke Murray's in there, possibly the assistant at UConn. I could see his name there. We'll see what happens. Villanova, you've heard Richard Pitino, Kevin Willard. You've heard guys like that. So it's going to be an interesting domino effect over the next 7-10 days. And I'm sure people are going to want to start getting these hires moving and going, because the portal's open and want to recruit your team.
Villanova, I think, is fascinating. Because, if you look at a Porter Moser, I think he's a better fit at Nova than Oklahoma.
I've heard his name too. His name too, yep.
Yeah, and I think Mick Cronin is a better fit at Villanova than UCLA. Willard, I would stay at Maryland. I'll be fascinated if Cronin or Porter get that job, if they leave the good jobs that they're at right now for Nova.
And I've heard Cronin's name too. But, a lot of those things too, Zach, you got to remember, some guys, you got to look at their buyouts. Some guys could have double-digit buyouts, 10, 12 million, or even 7 million. Like, is a school willing to pay? I mean,
Good point.
I mean, so names could be mentioned, but okay, are you really going to pay someone a buyout of 6, 7, 8 million to get a coach? That's a lot of money to spend that, plus give the new coach, plus you've had to fire the coach, plus the NIL. So I think before names are being mentioned, people really need to study the buyouts of where people's at, because you start getting, listen, $3 million is a lot of money, but you and I it was a lot of money, but a $3 million buyout for a school to maybe
a lot of money to me, maybe not for you.
No, it's a lot of money for me. Listen, hey, $20 is a lot of money for me, but $3 million buyout, $2 million buyouts, a little easier for a school. It's still a lot of money. And when you're sitting there saying, hey, this coach is going to cost me 7 or 8 just to get him out of his contract. And I don't know, in the end, do presidents and our schools say, hey, can we really do this financially? Are we really, because that's a big commitment to get someone to come from school. Can we, or get another coach that's maybe a lesser buyout, and can we get the same results? Those are things that the presidents, athletic directors, and the board of trustees have to ask.
Do you want to coach again, or with this NIL and transfer portal, you're like, I'm good on TV?
I love doing TV, but yes, I would love to coach again if it's the right opportunity. I've taken 2 schools to the tournament, have won championships at both schools. I would like to take a third. I'd like to have another opportunity. I love television. So I'm not just going to leave TV just for the heck of it, because as you know, Zach, the opportunities I've had in television are hard to get. So, but if there was the right opportunity, I would be all in to try to have an opportunity to coach again. If somebody felt I was the right fit for them, and I felt they were the right fit for me. So, and I would have, me, because I'm a positive guy. I think I look at the portal as an opportunity, the NIL, in a good way. And I think I'd be really good at it, because it's so much now, more so than ever, you're just dealing with people.
Yeah.
It's more so than ever a people's business. And yes, and you still got to coach and do it and develop players, but there's other things that I like about it, that is, it can, even with the dealing with the agent, it just streamlines everything. Instead of spending 3-4 years recruiting a high school guy and then chasing him at 15 and under, 16 and under, 17 and under, going to here, going to there, fine, which I loved. I love that. No problem. Now you don't have to do that. You just call the agent and say, hey, do we have a shot? What's it going to be? What's the contract? How much does he want? And you can just streamline recruiting instead of 3 years, basically into 3 weeks. I think it's way more efficient now. Yes, there's some things that are maybe not as good about it, but it's way more efficient, and you can streamline a lot of stuff, and you can save so much more time than ever before, where you're tracing kids for 3-4 years and not getting them. And you're like, it was exhausting to do that and then not get the kid. Those things were gut punches, because they were like a family member to you, the time and effort you spend. Now you just figure out, you go right to the point, right to the source, and within literally in 3 weeks if you're getting the kid or not.
He's Josh Pastner. Josh, appreciate the time as always. You're unbelievable whenever you join us. Thank you.
Thanks, Zach. Appreciate you.
There you go, Josh Pastner. I could talk college basketball with him for another 40 minutes, but then our show would literally be over, because it'd be running out of time, as we only got 40 minutes to go on a very busy Monday. But incredible insight by the former coach at Georgia Tech and Memphis. All right, we'll take a break. We'll come on back. We'll go around the room. Winners and losers from this past weekend in college basketball.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. 3 minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Forty-five seconds remaining. Thirty seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Welcome back to the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network.
Alrighty, we'll get to an ACK update coming up in a few moments. It is the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. I thought the round of 32 was awesome. Now, the opening round, not exciting. Round of 32, really damn good. And now we sit here in the college basketball landscape, and you have all 4 number 1 seeds remaining, 3 number 2 seeds remaining, 2 number 3 seeds remaining, 3 number 4 seeds remaining, a 5 seed, 2 6 seeds, and then a 10 seed. So that's the seeding breakdown. So outside of Arkansas, who's not your traditional 10 seed, and they're the lowest ranked seed being a 10 seed, outside of that, it's all 1 through 6, which I think is phenomenal. And I think it's going to make for an awesome Sweet 16 and on. And I thought the round of 32 was very good. But your Sweet 16 matchups, Auburn, Michigan, Ole Miss, Michigan State. Chris Beard going to join us tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time live on the show. Florida, Maryland, Texas Tech, Arkansas. You have Kentucky, Tennessee, which actually I think is the game that excites me the most. Houston, Purdue, BYU, Alabama, which I think is going to be a wonderful offensive game. And then you got Duke and Arizona. But anyway, let's go around the room. I'll start off the winners of the weekend. And I mentioned this with Josh Pastner, and he brought up a good point. So Andy leaves USC, right, to go to SMU. Then USC is open. The Muss bus goes out back west, and he goes and takes over USC. So that has an opening at Arkansas. And John Calipari, he was going to be back, but the fans didn't want him back. He goes, all right, Tyson family, I'm going over to Arkansas. Woo pig. Let's go. Pig suey. We're going all the way to Arkansas. Then Kentucky opens up. Just like Josh Pastner said, I remember I had a fiery rant. That's when I was actually yelling. Because, Kentucky fans were like, oh, no, I don't want Scott Drew. I'm like, Scott Drew won a championship at Baylor. Well, why wouldn't you want Scott Drew at Kentucky? And Scott Drew said, thanks, but no thanks. Okay. And they made a hire of a guy that I like. I didn't know if he was going to get the Kentucky job. And heck, we were talking about him. We were talking with him at Final Four Radio Row last year, where he loved our show intro music, and we had Mark Pope on a bunch. And Mark Pope was basically saying he fully believes that Cal won another national championship at Kentucky. And that's a crazy clip because he ended up replacing Cal, who went to Arkansas. Mark Pope is the guy now at Kentucky. And then you had Kevin Young, who was on the Sun staff. He finds his way to BYU. And a year later, Arkansas, Sweet 16. Kentucky, Sweet 16. BYU, Sweet 16. And quite frankly, it's all gravy from here on out with those three schools in this run. Sure, Kentucky, they beat Tennessee twice this season, but I know that's a great rivalry and all that stuff. And I know Kentucky fans will be irate if they lose, but am I crushing Kentucky if they lose to Tennessee by a few points? No, I'm not. Arkansas, you're the only double-digit seed remaining. I actually think they're going to get the job done up against Texas Tech. And then you look at BYU, that could be a firework game and a lot of explosions between BYU's offense and Alabama's offense. And I think it's just going to come down to who shoots a three-point ball better in that one. But BYU, Arkansas, and Kentucky, all coaches in year one at those institutions and all coaches that are in the Sweet 16. So those three schools, those three coaches are my winners from this past weekend. Stu?
My winners are all the teams that are in the SEC that advanced to the Sweet 16. Obviously, they set the record with 14 teams getting in. The first round wasn't great, 8-6, but the second round, the round of 32, was 7-1. They set the record for the most teams in the Sweet 16 with 7. It was pretty much a banner weekend for the SEC.
Samter, who is your winner from this past weekend?
I was initially going to go with last year's runner-up, Purdue and Matt Painter. I mean, there's so much doubt always around Purdue, and I think they have a legit chance of beating Houston. But I decided, because of in honor of our guest for tomorrow, I'm going to go Chris Beard. Right, this is a guy who was kind of down and out. He had a lot of negativity around him. Got fired from Texas for not for his coaching, but for other reasons.
Yeah,
picked up at a school,
and then the charges got dropped after he got fired.
Yeah,
too.
and picked up at a school that doesn't have a huge basketball pedigree. It's a football school in the SEC, and here he is going up against Coach Izzo in the elite in the Sweet 16. Chris Beard is kind of like riding back up that rocket.
I think he's unbelievable. I thought he was gonna find a way to win at Ole Miss. Was it to this level? Probably not. But that's going to be a heck of a coaching matchup between Chris Beard and also Tom Izzo. All right, losers. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm saying it. It's Coach Pitino. In the moment, with 5 minutes to go, I'm like, all right, you reset. He's just not having anything. You got to go to somebody else. You take out the Big East Player of the Year and R.J. Lewis. Usually coaches don't criticize other coaches. And I was kind of 50-50 on it. I leaned more. It was like 58% the wrong decision by Pitino. But when Josh Pastner comes on this show and goes, I love Coach Pitino, it could be the best coach of all time, I'm like, here comes the but. But I would live and die with the Big East Player of the Year. And I can't refute that. So Pitino, unbelievable. Regular season championship, conference tournament championship. They haven't won the conference tournament since 2000. Big East Coach of the Year, Big East Player of the Year, Big East Most Improved Player of the Year. But that game up against Arkansas, they had a chance to win it, even when they didn't play their best brand of basketball. And Pitino basically said it, that team, their free throws, their threes, either on or they're not. There's no middle ground. And that's what you've seen with St. John's throughout the year. But St. John's dug themselves in too deep of a hole. R.J. Lewis didn't show up, and Pitino in that decision-making. So both of them, I would say R.J. Lewis and Rick Pitino are the losers from this weekend. And by the way, let me just give the PSA here. And I've never seen these ads done in-game, but people sending disgusting messages, and they tie it into gambling. I don't know if it's directly tied into gambling. Are there people that lose money and tweet kids dumb things and stupid things? Absolutely. But even if there wasn't the gambling, I still think you're getting those morons, right? Like, I'm not comparing myself to a college basketball star. You should see my DMs sometimes. You should see my messages that I get. I had one person track down my cell phone number and send me like 300 texts and send like the most disgusting things I've ever read.
Was that wrong?
That's a good line, but it was a true story. But anyway, it's a good line out of you, Ack. Ack is like becoming a comedian here. What the heck has got it into you? You got the surgery done, and now like you're feeling better and everything's good?
I wouldn't say I'm feeling better, but I'm getting there.
Yeah. Ack drops his glasses. Zach, can you pick him up? But yeah, so obviously it goes without being said, if you tweet a college kid or any athlete, like just disgusting things. Like it's one thing to get on the radio and give a take about someone. Oh, they stunk. Oh, they messed up the game. But if you're sending death threats or you're talking about somebody's race, like you're just a scum of an earth. I'm going to catch myself there. You're a horrible human being. All right, like get a life. And I know you're it's just trolling. Stop. It's ridiculous. But my losers of the weekend, obviously, it's St. John's. All righty, Stu, who's your losers?
My losers are the Cinderella stories. Now, like you mentioned in the first hour, it's a double-edged sword, right? Like, okay, you get the Cinderellas to advance to the Sweet 16 and Elite 8, and then you have matchups that are less good. But in this case, you have a lot of great matchups. I just feel like I would like 1, 12, 13, or 14 seed to be in the Sweet 16. Not a gripe, I just think it would be nice to have one of them.
That's fine. Samter, who's your loser from this weekend?
I was going to go with R.J. Lewis, but since you went with Pitino, I'm going to change up a little bit. I think the guy that we've been talking about, going for history, going for a three-peat, Dan Hurley. It's been a rough year, and just when he shows emotion and there's a chance that maybe people can turn the tide because you see this emotion, he's caught cursing at the refs and blaming the refs for losing. And then the SID comes over and makes it even worse by threatening the reporter. So at the end of the day, I think Dan Hurley's the biggest loser. History goes down the drain. His reputation is taking a little bit of a hit.
Oh, stop it.
No. Just in general, not like as a basketball coach, but just in general, this season's been a rough year for him because of all the negative attention he's been receiving.
If you wanted to say the SID is the loser of the weekend, I would actually agree with that. I thought Dan Hurley did an incredible coaching job. And I know it's more than just a coaching job, but I don't think his antics are the worst thing in the world. Like, could he mature a little bit? Absolutely. But I really don't have this big problem I didn't think he was right about what he said about the refs. Let me be abundantly clear. I didn't think the refs impacted that game. But it's not the first time I heard a coach bitch about the refs, so they shouldn't be, and it won't be the last. I think the major problem is the SID. If that's true, walking up to that reporter, I'll ruin your life if you don't delete the video that you just took. Like, geez Louise, what are we doing there? All righty. Winners and losers of this past weekend in college basketball right there. Zach Gelb Show, Infinity Sports Network. We will eat a W next as Jameis Winston is off to the New York Giants. We will break down what that means for the NFL Draft, which is a month away. Update time first. Here's the Ackman, Rich Ackerman.
Infinity Sports Network. Sports Flash.
A couple of Big Ten coaching vacancies have been filled as Iowa has found its new head coach, naming 43-year-old Iowa City native Ben McCollum. In his one season at Drake, he led the Bulldogs to their best season since 1971. And prior to Drake, he won 4 national championships at Division II Northwest Missouri State. Colorado State's Nico Medved is headed back home to Minnesota just hours after his team came short of an upset of Maryland yesterday. He is now the Golden Gophers' new head coach. The Sweet 16 will tip off Thursday after a first weekend that didn't feature many upsets. The NBA schedule features 8 games tonight with the Lakers in Orlando to tip off the night of action. Tonight marks the start of a 4-game road trip for LeBron James and company, who need to pull it together after giving up 146 points to the Bulls on Saturday.
Every game is huge for sure, and we got to recoup. Obviously, our last road trip we didn't play well at all. We went 0-4, so it's definitely in the back of our minds. We know starting on Monday we got to play better basketball than we did tonight and what we did on our last road trip.
They're currently 4th in the West, a game behind Denver and a half game in front of idle Memphis. Denver will host the Bulls. I'm Rich Ackett.
This is the Infinity Sports Network. Follow us on Instagram. Our handle is Infinity Sports Network. That's Infinity Sports Network to follow us on Instagram.
You're in a 5-minute break. Four minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Four minutes remaining. Three minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Three minutes remaining. Two minutes, 30 seconds remaining. Two minutes remaining. One minute, 30 seconds remaining. One minute remaining. Five seconds remaining. 30 seconds remaining. Fifteen seconds. Break ends in 5 seconds.
Hey, this is Howie. And this is Nick from the Backstreet Boys. And you're listening to the Zach Gelb Show. And guess what? Zach is back. All right.
He's live. He's nationwide. This is the Zach Gelb Show.
Oh, my God, we're back again.
All right, it's time to answer Ask the Pros question of the day, and it's brought to you by O'Reilly Auto Parts. We have Adam in Wichita. He says, Zach, do you think the Jameis Winston signing by the New York Giants take him out of the running for taking a quarterback with the 3rd overall pick? You can submit a question by tweeting at INS Sports Center at Zach Gelb using the hashtag #AskThePros. Think O'Reilly Auto Parts for all your car care needs. Get guaranteed low prices and excellent customer service from the professional parts people at O'Reilly Auto Parts. O'Reilly Auto Parts. I didn't take that signing that way. I took it as they're not getting Aaron Rodgers. So you got Tommy DeVito there. You know, teams don't usually carry 3 quarterbacks, but you could. So you sign Jameis Winston. It's a very cheap deal. If Aaron comes back to you and says, hey, he wants to go there, you could still get the job done. But I don't think that the Giants believe that Aaron's going to do that. So even though you would be kind of screwed if Jameis Winston's your starting quarterback from week 1, I think the Giants have 2 options here. You either still go get Aaron Rodgers, which I don't think Aaron's going to want you, or you're going to find a way to take a quarterback 3rd overall. And today's March 24th. April 24th is the first round of the draft. The big question still out there is, I think most of us believe Cam Ward's going to be the number 1 overall pick. Do the Giants trade up to 1 to get him, or does Tennessee just take him? Right now, maybe the Giants get desperate. Maybe, Rodgers goes to the Steelers. You're sitting there, you're like, oh, we didn't even sign Russell Wilson. Also, I think they're done on Russell Wilson, too, if you're bringing Jameis Winston. And I think that they sit there, the Giants go, we're either getting Aaron, we probably don't think we're going to get him, so therefore, we're going to go take a quarterback in the draft. But can the Giants get their guy at 3, or one of their guys at 3? Because if they somehow reach and take Jackson Dart at 3, holy smokes, you thought the reaction to Daniel Jones was crazy. Wait until what the reactions would be to Jackson Dart. When I mean one of their guys, I mean either Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders. And to get to Cam, you're going to have to move up from 3 to 1. It's possible. Right? Connor Hughes was one of the first people that speculated that it's maybe a swap of 1s and then 2 3s, maybe a swap of 1s, a 3 and a 2. I would do that for Cam Ward. But if Cam Ward goes 1, you better hope you know what? That the Browns are taking Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter. Because the nightmare scenario for the Giants would be this. You already signed Jameis. Aaron picks the Steelers. Russ, let's say, signs somewhere else. And then you're banking on getting a quarterback in the draft. And 1-2 is quarterback. Which, if I'm the Browns, I would take a quarterback. I would absolutely positively tell everyone that would listen that I'm taking a quarterback right now. And even if you don't believe it, because if you're thinking you're taking a quarterback now and you're Cleveland, I think you believe that it's going to be Shedeur Sanders, even though I think Cam Ward is slightly better. Because most people's perception right now is that Cam Ward is going to be the number 1 overall pick. So if you tell everyone right now you're going to take Shedeur Sanders, maybe the Giants panic and they move up from 3 to 1 and give up future capital. You could still get Shedeur at 2 because the Giants would take Cam Ward. Or if you're not serious about taking a quarterback at 2 if you're Cleveland, and let's say the Giants don't move up to 1 because they still think you're going to get Shedeur Sanders, you could then call the Giants and say, we're on the clock at 2. Cam Ward's just off the board. We're going to take Shedeur Sanders unless if you give us a package that we can't refuse. And that's how you try to suck every last ounce out of the Giants into giving you a ridiculous package. You fall back one spot, and then you get Abdul Carter, or you still get Travis Hunter. So I genuinely believe, and I genuinely think that Cleveland should take the quarterback. Doesn't mean that they will. I think they should. But the Giants signing Jameis, I don't think takes them out of the running for a quarterback in the draft. If anything, it increases the chances that they're going to do so. Because does anyone actually think Aaron's going to the Giants? I think most people believe Aaron Rodgers saying, please, Minnesota, please. I'm begging you. Just take us. Take me, Minnesota. That's what Aaron's saying. And Minnesota's like, nope, not interested. So eventually, Aaron's going to have to bite the bullet here. Or Aaron's going to have to do some ayahuasca, call up Mike Tomlin, and just say, hey, it's a go. I'm coming to the Steel City. That's what Aaron's going to eventually have to do. And once that happens, does Russell Wilson going to the Giants, does it really move the needle for me? No, it doesn't. So you sign Jameis, it's a cheap option. His personality, I guess, does register with a lot of people, and you saw that at the Super Bowl. But are the Giants winning a ton of games with Jameis Winston? No. They got a ton of good sound bites, not winning games. So it's either you just did this as a placeholder, and then you still find a way to get Aaron, and Aaron's your guy for this year, which I don't think Aaron's going there. I don't think the Giants believe Aaron's going there. Or you have to go find a way to get a quarterback in the draft. Because if the Giants 2 years in a row, they go Daniel Jones and then Jameis Winston after missing on a quarterback last year, and they miss on a quarterback this year, Joe Shane and Brian Daboll, pack your bags. All righty? Pack your bags. And get ready to pay the extra fee at the airport, because those are going to be heavy bags. Those bags will be over 50 pounds. You have a lot of luggage going to wherever your next destination is. All right, that will do it for a Monday edition of the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network. Stu, you have a fantasy baseball draft tonight, is that right?
Yes, the last one of my 3.
You're in 3 fantasy baseball.
I'm in 3.
I'm in 1. I got my big fantasy baseball draft coming up tonight. By the way, Alex Rodriguez, I think you've heard of him, A-Rod, an A-bomb from A-Rod. He's going to join us on Thursday's show. Chris Beard's going to join us coming up tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll have some other probably surprises through the week as we try to finalize some things with some college basketball guests around the country. Santer, thank you. Stewart, thank you. Ack, thank you. And to all of our great listeners and everyone that watches as well on YouTube, thank you very much for tuning in to another splendid edition of the Zach Gelb Show on the Infinity Sports Network, Sirius XM Channel 375, the free Odyssey app, and, of course, streaming on YouTube. We will talk mañana, everybody, at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific time. Have a wonderful, have a blessed Monday evening, and you can always follow me Twitter and Instagram at Zach Gelb, ZACHGELB. We out. Bye-bye.